Lam said Tuesday that they had yet to decide whether to extend social distancing measures beyond May 7th. In Hong Kong, Karen Lee, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg. Naira.
Leanne, thank you so much. Bit of a muted day in markets, but we will talk banks next, with UBS up 3.5%, HSBC down 1.7%. This is Bloomberg.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
More than just a game, baseball is big business. For the chief revenue officer of the New York Mets, this means overseeing complex operations, key financial drivers, and interpreting data to make critical decisions every day.
How is your business managing complexity? Cohn Resnick can help you improve performance through an integrated business planning strategy that optimizes your data, streamlines processes, and keeps you ahead of the competition. Explore more at cohnresnick.com/MLB. Cohn Resnick, Advisory Assurance Tax. Transform your game.
To protect her home and family in a disaster, Karen was willing to wade through water, mud, and insurance paperwork.
Yeah, I can do this.
You go, Karen! By simply understanding and updating what her insurance covers and doesn't cover now, she'll be better prepared no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Tom Keene.
Joining us now from Johns Hopkins University in the Bloomberg School of Public Health is Joshua Sharfstein. And of course, we should mention that Mr. Bloomberg is the founder of Bloomberg LP, this television and radio operation, and he has been more than generous in his philanthropy to his Johns Hopkins University. Joshua, it is percolating as it does in every viral and bacterial pandemic. And it's really not in the headlines, but it's in the mystery and minds of all. And that is a question of viral reinfection, viral mutation, and the idea of how we will respond, infected or not infected, to the virus in the future. What is the current reading and belief that you have?
So I think the current reading is, like with most viral infections, there will be some degree of immunity, particularly for people who experience illness. How much and for how long is not known. And it's also not known which tests will really capture that. So I don't think there is a concern that this will behave very, very differently than everything else. But there's a desire to really understand the specifics before making policy.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Good morning from London. I'm Sandra Kilhoff with this Bloomberg Business Flash. Now, we're seeing a mixed trading day in Europe. It follows a similar trading day in Asia earlier this morning. So the Stock 600 currently flat. The FTSE down 0.1%. The DAX also fairly flat. The CAC 40 down 0.2% at the moment. US futures looking fairly unchanged as well. But in stock specifics, we are seeing a bit of movement. HSBC, for instance, moving lower here in London after reporting a surge surge in credit losses. UBS, however, gaining 3.8% after profit came in slightly better than expected. BP also moving lower here in London after profit slipped quite dramatically in the first quarter. Now, the reason why we are seeing markets so mixed today is because of that massive drop we saw in oil yesterday, and that's really continuing today with WTI below $11 a barrel, still sliding 17%. Brent down 5.5% at $18 a barrel. Bear in mind, this happened after the world's biggest oil ETF sold its June contract. So this in turn weighing on commodity currencies. The Nikkei down 0.2%. The Aussie dollar fairly flat at the moment. Do keep an eye on the Kiwi though. It's sliding 0.5% after Westpac said interest rates will drop to negative by November. So something to keep an eye on there. Otherwise, G10 currencies fairly range bound. The yen holding at 107.1. The Bloomberg dollar spot index fairly flat. Sterling at 124, the euro at 108. Finally, in the bond markets, 10-year Treasury yields slightly lower, down a basis point at 65 basis points. 10-year bund yields holding at negative 45, 10-year gilt yields at 30 basis points. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Len Garens with more on what's going on around the world.
Sandra, thank you. Let's start here in the UK, where Prime Minister Boris Johnson will lead a minute's silence this morning in tribute to all frontline staff who have died in the fight against coronavirus. More than 90 NHS staff and social care workers have lost their lives during the pandemic. The nation is preparing to fall silent at 11 a.m. The coronavirus is here to stay and is likely seasonal. That's the conclusion of China's top scientists at a briefing in Beijing. They say it will likely come back in waves, and summer won't necessarily lead to fewer cases. This new virus is different from SARS, as a high number of asymptomatic cases makes it harder to fully contain. And President Trump says he knows how North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un is doing, and South Korea says it knows where he is, but neither is giving away any details. There have been days of speculation about Kim's health. President Trump says he can't talk about it now and added, "I just wish him well." Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg. Naira.
Leanne, thank you so much. Now let's get back to the banking earnings from this morning. Europe's biggest lenders have reported a surge in credit losses amid the coronavirus outbreak. HSBC taking its biggest charge for bad debt in almost 9 years and saying it expects credit losses to rise to as much as $11 billion this year. The picture was a bit better over at UBS, which saw net profits surge 40% despite concerns about income streams from its wealth management units. For more, let's bring in Jonathan Tice, Senior Analyst for European Banks at Bloomberg Intelligence. Jonathan, great to have you with us. I know going into this, you were hoping perhaps for some sort of guidance from the transformation plan they announced back in February, a lot of which has, of course, been put on hold because of coronavirus. The shares are down just a little bit today, down 1.5% in London. What was the biggest takeaway for you? Was it the scale of the credit losses that we might see in 2020, but also the fact that that number, as CFO Ewan Stevenson said to us on TV, could be subject to change?
Morning. Well, I think in terms of the credit losses, we knew that they were in a position to take a big number, unlike a lot of Europe's banks, because they're already profitable and they've got a very big capital cushion. And if you look at consensus, it had already moved to 10 billion for 2020, so it's virtually at the top end of their range. So not really a surprise there. And also, if you look at where they're providing for expected losses, apart from Singapore, where they had the Him Leong issue, most of it is the US and the UK, as expected. Santander just posted some pretty ugly numbers in the UK as well, so that's going to be quite ugly. In terms of targets, I mean, they haven't really given us much of an update. Capital return, they've said, well, look, we'll let you know by the full year results, i.e., what's the regulator going to say, because they could afford to pay it. They have said that they're prepared to let capital fall below their 14% minimum threshold this year, which is entirely possible if things get tough. But net, I think a decent set of numbers. And if anything, the thing that I'm most surprised at is the fact that they're continuing their investment at the same run rate. And in fact, it's up 25% in the first quarter, year on year, i.e. they're still pretty comfortable.
Yeah, what do we know about this single biggest creditor that seems to be the problem for them? The issue that's really pushed them into difficulties more than any other at the moment, the one in Singapore.
Well, the one-off in Singapore, obviously they didn't name it, but it is widely known and has about $4 billion in total outstanding, I think, to the banks, according to our BI credit guys. So, I mean, that's more of a one-off, and who knows, you may get right back. So the way oil's moved, I doubt it. The issue is very much more, if it's 7 versus if it's 11 billion this year, I mean, that's a huge swing. And also, if it's only 7 this year, because things didn't get any worse, that means that next year's estimates are all right, in which case that is a very good driver for the share price. But clearly, they're flagging to us. They haven't got the visibility on a very big number at the moment. They've got plenty of comfort, they've got plenty of capital, and they've got a long-term horizon.
Yeah, we didn't get a huge amount of visibility either in terms of when the dividend might be restarted. We've only got a minute, Jonathan, so we've got to move on to UBS. Goldman says the results are strong and in the right place. Is that your takeaway as well? The shares are higher.
I think there's two amazing things. One, net new money, very impressive, and also the gross margin for UBS was better than anybody expected and rose nicely. So in a pretty horrible world, they took a hit on capital, but the underlying revenue streams were surprisingly resilient. So given less credit risk, you can see why the market would prefer to be there if you're going to be in a European financial than quite a few other names.
Yeah, UBS seems attractive. Jonathan, thanks so much. Jonathan Tice, their senior analyst for European banks at Bloomberg Intelligence. We're going to be talking BP in a moment. Indeed, we're going to hear from the BP CEO, Bernard Looney, at a time when oil is clearly in crisis. But how are the markets looking at the moment, Mara?
Well, we are seeing UBS more than 4% higher. BP's actually down 2%. Overall, we're pretty muted in equity trading overall. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks will try to extend their gains as oil looks to stop the bleeding. The S&P 500 is at its best level since March 10th amid continued talk of easing coronavirus lockdowns. Bulging inventories halted a 4-day rally in crude, sending it back below $13 a barrel. Increased demand for personal protection equipment stemming from the coronavirus pandemic is unlikely to have helped 3M's bottom line. It's expected to report accelerating first-quarter sales declines and lower its outlook for the year when it opens its books this morning. Boeing is preparing to reopen its 787 manufacturing plant in South Carolina next week. Senior leaders and managers will return later this week, with production workers coming back next Monday. Johnson & Johnson must continue to defend itself against thousands of lawsuits claiming that its baby powder causes ovarian cancer. A judge's ruling barred some expert testimony in the case, but not all. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
If knowledge is power, the Bloomberg Terminal is your power up, connecting you to real-time financial data, market-moving news, powerful analytics, and an influential network of financial decision-makers around the world. Share ideas, negotiate trades, and gain the insight you need to make more informed decisions. See how the Terminal can take your workflow to the next level at Bloomberg.com/professional.
IBKR is the professional's gateway to the world's markets. IBKR offers commissions starting at $0 for U.S.-listed stocks and ETFs, enhanced price execution via IB Smart Routing, and access to our powerful trader workstation, web, mobile, and API trading platforms. In addition, our clients enjoy the lowest cost access to stocks, options, futures, Forex, fixed income, and more on over 125 markets in 31 countries. Learn more or open an IBKR integrated investment account at IBKR.com.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Georgia. I love social care because you never know what each day will bring. The thing that I would say to anybody that was thinking about a job in social care is go for it.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
Day
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face to face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, Video Call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has ignored a call on purpose? Tick. Talked yourself out of a workout? Tick. Spent far too long scrolling on your phone? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5 and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Picture in your mind a stylish Audi with striking LED headlights, sporty alloy wheels, and some of our most advanced features, including a 10-inch digital cockpit and smart assistant systems like lane departure warning. Picture what that Audi looks like. Now think smaller. The Audi A1. It's not a small car, it's a small Audi. Visit audi.co.uk. Audi. Vorsprung durch Technik.
We're all having to get used to the new normal, and at Birkbeck University, we're experts at being adaptable. As London's evening university, we've been flexing around the lives of busy commuters for nearly 200 years. And you can find everything you need to secure your place for autumn online. From expert advice to virtual tours, a live chat with our students and course applications. Make the new normal, studying for the career that you really want. Search Birkbeck, and it's new problem solved.
While most of us are looking out for each other at this time, sadly, fraudsters are trying to take advantage of the situation. Here's Chris Ainsley from Santander with advice for keeping your money safe.
If you're buying anything online, take care and don't pay by money transfer. Always pay by card. Take time to check the seller is genuine, and if you're unsure, then stop and don't send any money.
For more advice on keeping your money safe, visit santander.co.uk.
Live to London on DAB Digital Radio, to New York, Bloomberg 1130, to Washington DC, Bloomberg 99.1, to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1, to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
8:30 a.m. in London, 9:30 if you're listening in Paris, Frankfurt or Brussels. Good morning, everyone. I'm Naira Chehich.
And I'm Roger Hearing, and you're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Roger, looking at the markets today, 30 minutes into the equity market open, muted gains on the Stock 600. We're up about 0.1% versus a 1.8% gain in yesterday's session. Across regional equity benchmarks, FTSE 100's flat, the CAC 40 edges into negative territory, as does the IBEX. The DAX up 0.1%. The FTSE MIB leading gains up 0.9%. Yesterday, we saw the S&P 500 hit its highest since March 10th. Futures muted. They've been oscillating a little bit through the Asian session. We're flat on S&P E-minis, Nasdaq futures, Dow futures up just 0.1%. The 10-year Treasury yield is steady on a 65 handle. European bond markets quiet as well. In FX, you're seeing some fairly narrow ranges in G10, but overall, the Bloomberg Dollar Index dead flat now. We were seeing some strength earlier. The Kiwi's been underperforming due to some rate cut bets from the RBNZ after a note from Westpac, but really it's oil that's stolen the show again. Yesterday, we saw WTI plunge 25%. We're down another 18% now, $10 a barrel. Brent down 5.6% at $18.84. And really what exacerbated the volatility yesterday, Roger, was the biggest oil ETF, USO. They sold all their holdings in the June WTI contract. So that caused a widening of the spread in the June and July contracts as well. Opportunities for some in there. But really, this begs the question over how much more volatility we're going to see ahead of May 19th when that June WTI contract expires, particularly with the backdrop of weak demand and also the issue of storage. US producers have started making crude deliveries to the nation's emergency stockpile as storage space runs out. So really, oil in terms of macro markets is the big focus. Elsewhere, it's fairly quiet because it's really corporate news that's very much in focus today, particularly the banks, Roger.
Yeah, indeed. Of course, we've heard from the banks earlier, UBS, HSBC and Santander. Interesting where they're going in all this and where the weaknesses are and where the strengths still are, particularly in terms of volatility. Well, now let's move on to some of today's top stories. Here in the UK, the government is urging Britons to stick with the lockdown for now. That's as scientists are drawing up options for easing movement restrictions, and the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak's also having a think about how to gradually unwind support for businesses. This week, the government faces a self-imposed deadline of conducting 100,000 tests a day by the end of April, which it insists it will still meet. But on Sunday, only some 37,000 tests were carried out.
In the US, the White House has issued a new strategy to expand virus testing. As well as new guidance for states, retailers announced they'd open hundreds of new sites to provide tests. President Trump has endured criticism over the slow pace of ramping up testing. He says he's confident the US has enough testing to begin the reopening process. And look, coronavirus transitions us to the bank earnings as well, Roger, because, of course, it was all about loan loss provisions, and starting with HSBC.
Yeah, they're taking their biggest charge of bad debt in almost 9 years. Expected credit losses swelled to $3 billion in the first quarter. The bank's profit also missed estimates. HSBC is delaying part of its restructuring program, and that includes cutting around 35,000 jobs and merging units. They have been one of the major banks reporting today.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we spoke to the CFO, Ewan Stevenson, on TV earlier, Roger. And look, in terms of those credit losses, the key thing here is that they did also caution that those bad loan charges may climb to as much as $11 billion this year. And in terms of the dividend, that was halted, of course, at the behest of the UK regulator, but no guidance really as to when exactly that might be restarted. They're looking more towards the end of the year for that. Now, with UBS, it's expressing confidence in its ability to withstand a surge in bad loans, but it's warning the pandemic is putting pressure on key streams of income in its wealth management business. The bank saw net profit surge 40% to about $1.6 billion. Shrinking its investment bank has also left it with limited exposure to large corporate loans. That's allowed it to put less aside for future losses than many of its peers. And this is one of the key things that came out, the fact that they talked about their credit quality, net new money as well. So overall, when you look at how the shares have reacted, HSBC shares down 1.4%, but we have actually seen UBS trade higher in today's session, Roger. So with UBS, you're looking at a gain of 4.3% in those shares. And Goldman saying the results were strong and UBS is in the right place.
And earlier, of course, you were talking about oil being one of the key movers in the markets, probably the only one. And onto the oil majors, BP has seen its profits plunge by 2/3 in the first quarter. And this comes as the virus pandemic hammered energy prices and, of course, demand. A measure of indebtedness also rose to its highest level in more than 8 years, underscoring the financial strain on oil majors. The CEO, Bernard Looney, spoke to Bloomberg's Anna Edwards and Matt Miller earlier, who began by asking about BP's new $10 billion credit facility.
We're very focused on three main things, and the first is protecting the health of our staff, particularly those on the front line who are providing the services that keep the energy flowing and providing the retail services, the fuels and the products that people need. So we're doing a lot of work on that, both their physical health, I would add, and their mental health. Secondly, supporting the communities where we work. It's a very difficult time for the world, and we're very focused as a large company on helping, because our people want to help and we want to help. And then thirdly, we're very focused on strengthening our finances and controlling the things that we control, capital, cost, making sure that we're shoring up our liquidity, strengthening that balance sheet, and importantly, driving that break-even down of our business.
And with that in mind, was it an easy decision to decide to not tap any government sources of funding? What's driven that, Bernard? Why decide not to take any of the help that might be available?
Well, I think if we think about it in terms of the actions that, like, the government here in the UK has taken to strengthen and protect jobs, which I think was an early move, a quick and decisive move, which I think will have a huge impact in a positive way. We have taken a decision here to not make any staff redundant for COVID purposes for 3 months. And we've also taken a decision that we will, for example, not furlough workers. We believe that a scheme like that is not intended for a company like BP. There are far more companies who are in a much worse off situation than we are. And we're very focused on taking care of ourselves, taking care of our own finances. There are many levers that we have in our hand. We're going to take capital down by 25% this year, maybe another $1 to $2 billion next year. We're taking $2.5 billion out of our cost base by the end of next year. And we think, Anna, we can get our business to a break even of less than $35 a barrel next year. So it really is about controlling the things that we can control and leaving some of those facilities for the people who need them more.
So you can get to a break even of less than $35. What's going to be the crucial lever you want to pull then to get you down to those kind of break even prices?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, our break even in 2019 was around $56. So going to 35 by next year, I think, is the right thing to do, and we'll drive it lower if we can. The economic uncertainty here, I think, is immense on how this recovery is going to play out over the coming months. But we're very focused on the basics of the business, Anna, and capital is obviously a huge lever for us. Planning to spend around $15 billion. We'll take that down to 11.5. We'll take $1 billion out of our lower 48 business, for example, defer some exploration and appraisal spend, defer some retail growth projects, things that we can control. And then on our cost base, we're big believers in the digital agenda, have been for quite some time. So we've invested heavily. We'll invest further, but we believe we can take more out of automation and digitization. And then also on Agile, in terms of how we work as a team, we want to become much more integrated, much more agile, much more focused. And we announced on the 12th of February that we would reinvent BP. And that's what this is about. And therefore, we think we can take, at a minimum, I think, $2.5 million out of our cost base by the end of next year. So they're the types of things that we have in mind.
And that was the BP CEO, it's Bernard Looney, speaking to Anna Edwards and Matt Millen. The BP share price right now down 2.3%.
For the latest in global news now, let's turn to Leanne Gerrans. Hi, Leanne.
Neighbour, good morning and thank you. Global confirmed coronavirus cases have passed the 3 million mark. Today, Spain and France will unveil their plans to ease restrictions on public life. Leaders are anxious to restart their economies. Still, there are concerns that moving too quickly could backfire and lead to more infections. New cases just rose in France and Spain. They surged by less than 2,000 for a second day in a row. Meanwhile, Italy also recorded its lowest number of cases in 7 weeks yesterday. That's as Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte slowly starts to map a way out of the lockdown. Bloomberg's Alessandro Speciali reports.
Italy is finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel after a drastic lockdown that is now in its 8th week. On Sunday night, a tired and at times stumbling Conte said that most companies will reopen on May 4, while most shops and museums will have to wait 2 more weeks. Caution, Conte warned, is still needed to avoid a second wave of infections. In Rome, Alessandro Speciale, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
In the world of financial advice, speed, clarity, and foresight aren't just nice to have, they're required to survive. Adipar provides advisors the real-time portfolio reporting and insights required to realize the goals and personal potential for their clients. Trusted by thousands of wealth advisors, from family offices, RIAs, and large financial institutions, Adipar helps you make better, more informed investment decisions. To learn more, visit us at addepar.com. Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at Bevel.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Greg and I lead the team at a residential care home. Supporting people to live life to the fullest is an amazing job to have.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
The loungewear essentials that ease you into your comfort zone. The Fitbit that helps you step up your fitness goals. The yoga mat that turns your lounge into a studio. With a choice of ways to pay, you can enjoy being the best possible you. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5 and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
While most of us are looking out for each other at this time, sadly, fraudsters are trying to take advantage of the situation. Here's Chris Ainsley from Santander with advice for keeping your money safe.
If you're buying anything online, take care and don't pay by money transfer. Always pay by card. Take time to check the seller is genuine, and if you're unsure, then stop and don't send any money.
For more advice on keeping your money safe, visit santander.co.uk.
Stay in touch with your loved ones with great phones at great prices from Tesco Mobile. Like the incredible iPhone 7 with advanced HD front camera. Perfect for video calling. For just $13.99 a month. That's our lowest ever price. Search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 14th of June. Was £15.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements with Tesco Mobile required. Subject to status. Phased policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games. With Game Replay on TuneIn, you can hear every matchup of the 2019-2020 season so far. And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search classic Game Replays to start listening. Get your daily dose of NFL shop talk with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Start your morning off right with Around the NFL.
Injured, depleted roster into the playoffs, and I didn't think they belonged in the playoffs.
I think overall, though, it was a great divisional round weekend because you got the first one.
Run into the end zone with the Move the Sticks podcast.
We had a fun little Zoom cocktail hour last night.
Oh, yeah.
What a star-studded affair. Greg, you were there for the earlier part, but it really popped off
A little later on, we had Zach Goldman.
And dive deep into the sidelines with the Peter King podcast.
On the occasion of his 50th birthday, come down and record a little bit of retrospective on the life and times of Brett Lorenzo Favre.
That sounds like a bestseller.
It sounds like a precursor to a funeral. That's what it is.
I wasn't thinking that.
Explore these and more hard-hitting NFL podcasts right here on TuneIn.
Lines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Good morning from London. I'm Sandra Kilhoff with this Bloomberg Business Flash. Now, we are seeing European stock markets moving slightly higher. The Stock 600 up 0.6%, the FTSE gaining 0.3%, and the DAX up 0.5%. This in part thanks to some stocks moving higher. For instance, the UBS gaining 4.5% in Switzerland this morning after profit came in better than expected. But we are seeing HSBC and BP both lower after disappointing reports coming out of them. Delivery Hero, however, surging more than 2% this morning. So a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to the results this morning. US equity futures pointing to a slightly higher open. Now, investors are trying to find their way because oil has extended its sharp losses today after WTI slumped below $11 a barrel. So we are seeing WTI still at $10 a barrel now, 33 cents actually. Brent falling 4% at $19 a barrel. Of course, this comes after the world's biggest oil ETF sold its June contract. So this in turn weighing a bit on commodity currencies today. The NOK and Aussie dollar both slightly weaker. The Kiwi sliding earlier but now regaining a little bit of those losses. It was a bit weaker after Westpac said interest rates will drop to negative by November. Otherwise, we are seeing G10 currencies fairly range bound. The Bloomberg dollar spot index flat. Dollar yen up 0.2%. Sterling at 124. The euro at 108. Finally, in the fixed income markets, 10-year treasury yields holding on to yesterday's gains, currently at 66 basis points. We're seeing 10-year bund yields slightly higher at negative 44, 10-year gilt yields at 30 basis points. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Ian Garens with more on what's going on around the world. Sandra, thank you. Much of Europe is moving to loosen coronavirus restrictions. Spain and France are setting out plans to ease their lockdowns today. This will follow Germany, Austria and the Netherlands in relaxing containment rules. But after more than 100,000 deaths on the continent, policymakers are wary of spurring a second wave of infections. Hong Kong will reopen government offices and some public facilities, taking cautious steps to get the city back to work. That's as daily coronavirus cases dwindle. But today, leader Carrie Lam said they are yet to decide if they should extend social distancing measures beyond May the 7th. And President Trump says he knows how North Korea's Kim Jong-un is doing. And South Korea says it knows where he is. But neither is giving away any details. There have been days of speculation about Kim's health. President Trump says he can't talk about it now and added, "I just wish him well." Global news 24 hours a day on air and on QuickTake by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Jan Gerens. This is Bloomberg Naira.
Leanne, thank you so much. Let's get back to the markets now. And joining us down the line is François Savary, CIO at Prime Partners. François, great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us today. Lots to discuss around investing as we continue to monitor developments around the coronavirus. But I just want to start on oil because of that outsized move we saw in WTI yesterday. We didn't get to negative, but we saw a 25% drop nonetheless in that June contract. We extend losses today. Our strategist Julian Lee wrote a piece just a couple of days ago in which he said negative oil prices were a warning, not an anomaly. He said it's a clear warning of just how scarce storage space for oil is getting. Prices below zero are the market's way of telling producers to stop pumping now. We understand yesterday's move was largely exacerbated by what happened around the biggest oil ETF, USO. But nonetheless, do you agree with Julian?
Yes, I agree with her. I think that it's very important. We all know that there was this OPEC Plus agreement. This OPEC Plus agreement that was signed a few weeks ago is going to materialize in May, but we all know that the storage capacity is getting very close to 70. People even believe that now it's close to 80% use. So it's very, very important that in the short term there is some restraint on oil production, because for the next 2 to 3 months, and even for the next 3 to 6 months, it will be difficult for the market to absorb all this excess supply that was created on the market. So yes, they need to refrain.
Well, Francois, it's interesting. You say 3 to 6 months there, but beyond that, do you see potentially, as things come back online, as the recovery builds, as China's manufacturing capacity gets back on stream, that actually we could see quite a lot of take-up of that excess and perhaps a change in the position of the price?
I totally agree. You know, at the end of the day, we live in a very strange situation where it's very difficult to make any forecast, in the sense that at the end of the day, we are living the second phase of a long sequence. The first was to control coronavirus. The second phase is to organize the end of the lockdown, and then there will be the recovery. And I think that nobody knows exactly how the recovery will shape, but I think that recovery prospects exist, and it should be supportive for the oil price. Moreover, don't forget one thing. In the OPEC Plus agreement that was signed a few weeks ago, it's not only about dealing with the short-term issue of oil supply, it's also about a medium-term reduction of 6 million barrels per day that should materialize in the year 2021, 2022. So that's very, very important. I still think that over the short term there is difficulty for oil prices, but medium term, if the recovery materializes and the agreement is respected, we should see a recovery in oil prices in the medium term.
Okay, let's talk about other asset classes then, Julian, and specifically risk assets. We saw the S&P 500 hit its highest since March 10th yesterday. Will phase 2, the phase 2 you're talking about, be a reality check for risk assets, equities and credit, perhaps seeing a move to the downside?
I think that it is a reality check, because, you know, the first step, which was the control, people were doubting a lot when there was discussion about the ability for the Western economies to control the disease. Now we have all the good news on that front that are behind. Now we are entering this second phase with a lot of uncertainties. So I think that you have the combination in the short term of the fact that you still have a lack of visibility in terms of economic activity. You still have the earnings coming out. We have a lot of earnings, company reporting earnings this week, and then you have a lot of uncertainties. The second phase is beginning, so we need to be able to assess if in this second phase things are going well. There could be some setbacks, because from this second phase depends the third phase of the sequence, which is the recovery in the second half of the year. If you are not able to really go through this second phase properly, then it will be difficult for the economic recovery to materialize. So I think that, yes, investors face a lot of uncertainties in the short term. It could induce, considering the fact that we had a strong rally on equities, I think it could induce some consolidation of the recent gains as soon as you have some quote-unquote bad news coming on that front. So yes, I think that you need to be positioned for some kind of setback on the equity market, but I'm not expecting the market to go to the low that we experienced in March.
Yeah, and Francois, I mean, coming interestingly on that, what about the central bank action this week? Because there's got a lot about. There's the ECB, there's the Fed, of course. We had the BOJ at the beginning of the week, responding in some ways to what they can make of the way that the global economy is going. What do you think is required now from the Europeans, from the ECB, to make things better than they are?
I think that what is required is that when you look, for example, at the development on the credit market over the last 10 days, there is a stabilization after a strong recovery, especially on the investment grade and to a lesser extent on the high yield. I think that it was the central banks, the fact that the central bank intervened, they helped really to unlock what was terrible by the end of March. So what is necessary from the central bank? I think that on the Fed side, it's very important that they communicate on the fact that they are going to maintain condition accommodative in the coming quarters, and they need to improve the forward guidance, try to give the investors confidence that they are going to remain very accommodative for a long period of time. I think that in terms of the ECB, the challenge is bigger because we all know that they are purchasing a lot of assets lately, especially the Italian assets. Some good news lately also was the fact that the S&P decided not to downgrade the debt of Italy. I think that what the ECB needs certainly is to think about increasing the QE, the total QE that they are going to do, and give some information if they are inclined to go this road, because with the amount of money, the amount of assets that they purchase, we don't see with the current level, with the current limit, if they are really able to continue the process.
Yeah, makes sense. Francois, in terms of your positioning in the portfolio over the last few weeks, you've kept exposure to equities for a rebound, increased IG exposure in terms of credit, increased high-yield exposure in a growth profile. Overall, you're keeping a positive message on risk assets for the medium term, but you also just talked about being prepared for a pullback. How would you express that preparation in the portfolio?
With hedges, we have decided 10 days ago to introduce a hedge through futures on our equity holdings, which are, I would say, neutral in gross term. In net terms, now we have a slight underweight to face a kind of setback on the market, maybe 10% setback on the market in the coming weeks. So that's the way we express. We hedge part of our equity exposure, as we believe that over the last months, the condition has moved in favor of more credit, less equities in a diversified portfolio.
Great to have you with us. Very interesting. We've just run out of time, I think, Francois. Very interesting stuff. We'll catch up with you again soon, hopefully. Francois Savary, CIO at Prime Partners. Great to have you with us. And we are almost an hour into the equity market open here in Europe. We're moving a little bit more to the upside, up 0.8% on the Stock 600, and US futures looking more positive too, up 0.4%. This is Bloomberg.
GEP, AI.
Oh, just there, Dave. Smashing. Great. Really? Night, Steve. Yeah, see ya. Built to take the big knocks. Samsung rugged devices. Easy to use, hard to break. Explore the Samsung Rugged range.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Greg and I lead the team at a residential care home. Supporting people to live life to the fullest. It's an amazing job to have.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
Today at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
External pressure is going to be an opportunity for reform in China. I think liquidity more generally across financial markets is an issue and a concern.
The Spanish banks in particular are in a much better place than they were 5 years ago.
It wouldn't be great to have a drawn-out trade conflict with the US or indeed with anybody else.
I've never been one to prophesy where sterling will be, and you're a madman if you think you can.
Bloomberg Daybreak Europe on Bloomberg Radio.
A very good morning from London. I'm Caroline Hepke. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. We're live from London here on London DAB Digital Radio. So this morning, in terms of the markets, European equities right now slightly higher, up 0.7%. FTSE 100 also gaining 0.4%. The CAC count up by 0.5%. We've had a lot of big bank earnings this morning to digest. UBS posting a 40% jump in profit to $1.6 billion. But it's the loan loss loss provision that worries everyone, the highest in a decade. We will be hearing from Bloomberg's interview with the UBS CEO Sergio Amotti in just a moment. But HSBC also talking about loan losses, credit losses on a quarterly basis, $3 billion. As for other things that we're looking at, in terms of the virus overall, opening up, perhaps becoming something more of a reality in some parts of Europe at least, although we do still have 3 million cases of coronavirus around the world. But if you think it couldn't get any worse, perhaps it has. The UK Health Minister just about half an hour ago or so warning about a serious new illness connected to coronavirus, but in children. Some with underlying health conditions have died here in the UK, and the government has called it very worrying. So that on the coronavirus front, we will bring you more in world and national news. The other big threads, though, in the market, of course, are oil, the continued drop in June prices, WTI crude futures dropping 18.4%, $10.43 the barrel. Brent crude futures at $19.42, also dropping 0.3%. I also note that Goldman Sachs expects the pandemic to hit southern European countries harder. That is often the way with the structure of Europe, but they do see unemployment expected to rise to 23% in Spain and 17% in Italy. So I think that is also well worth noting this morning. In terms of the bond markets, I'll give you a check of prices there. So US yields currently at 66 basis points, German yields at negative 43 basis points, so up by 1 basis point, and Italian yields at 1.7%. Those will be closely watched, obviously, because the big central banks week, ECB decision on Thursday, and the Fed has is beginning its two-day meeting later today. Okay, so that's a little look at the markets and the top sort of news stories this morning. Pretty mixed trading day. Investors digesting these credit losses from the big European banks, the slump in crude oil. For more on these stories, I'm joined by Sami Char, who's Chief Economist at Lombard Odier. Sami, thank you so much for being with us. You've argued that we will be seeing excess supply in terms of the oil market for some time to come. But what does that actually mean for the growth outlook?
Hi, Caroline, and thank you so much for having me on the show. Well, it means two things very important, right, to have persistently low oil price. One, it means that you do not need to worry about inflation. Inflation expectations will be anchored at a low level. So basically, it will not pressure central banks to remove out of their accommodative stance. Now, again, it gives them a lot of time, and it does mean that we are in for a low level of interest rates or even negative interest rates for the rest of Europe for a very, very long period of time. So when you think about the valuation of your assets, risk premia, that is an important factor to keep in mind. And the second one is obviously that you want to favor consumers that will benefit from low oil price, so Asia, Europe, the U.S. consumer as well. I wouldn't say the U.S. as a whole, but the U.S. consumer over, let's say, Central Europe and Latin America. So really favor consumers, 70% of the planet, over producers, the rest of the 30%.
Okay, that's an interesting point. I mentioned reopening of economies perhaps becoming something more concrete in Europe now. Does that mean that we also get a clearer picture on the shape and timing of recovery for Europe?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is the tipping point of basically this COVID shock. Now, finally, we can start thinking about the recovery, about the healing process. The first wave has been contained, not, always fantastically well, but I mean, this first phase of the crisis seems to be behind. And it's actually very positive that we can now focus on the healing process. And I would say this, a healing process and a recovery process is never nor linear nor homogeneous. So linear, it means that it's never going to be just a straight line improvement. There's going to be ups and downs, periods of despair and periods of hope, periods where you think that things are going great, the recovery process is going fantastically well, and some of the times it's going to be the contrary. So it's not going to be a straight line up, it's not linear, and it's not homogeneous, which means that, some countries and some regions will basically recover ahead of others. So it's going to be a very uneven process, and that obviously is going to take a bit of time. But the fact that we can be in a recovery is already a positive development.
Okay, so then does that mean that there will be more expectation actually on the ECB to announce something on Thursday? You know, there is some talk about increasing the size of the pandemic programme as soon as Thursday, and how much will that help, given that we don't actually have a joint European plan yet on the fiscal front?
These are very fair points. Listen, a lot of policies have been engineered outside the traditional meeting. So I'm not sure that Thursday there is particularly a lot to expect. I mean, most of the monetary policy actions and tools are already in place. So you need to tweak some of the things. You need to make some adjustments. But I would say the main policies and the main schemes are already in place. So not a lot of expectations on Thursday, but again, just some adjustments along the way that can be done at a traditional meeting or between two meetings. And then obviously in the case of Europe, well, you know, a lot more has to be done on the fiscal side. I would say individual countries have already done quite a lot. On the common side, I mean, an ESM with very low conditionality, and, you know, at some point a recovery fund, although we lack the details, is also a big step forward. So Corona bonds or Euro bonds might be a little bit too much to expect for this time. But I would say Europe is also moving forward in its fiscal response.
But how long, in terms of time frame, do you think it might take for Europe to come up with, you know, a coordinated plan? I mean, that's surely key, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Again, a lot has been done at an individual country level. A lot has been done on a common level on the monetary side with the ECB. And I would say, fiscally speaking, there is already the ESM with low conditionality in place, so that is already something. But very clearly in the weeks to come, they will have to give details and hopefully something that will be ambitious on the rescue fund. So in our view, this is a question of weeks. There is a lot of pressure for them to give in details and to move forward on that front. But as always with Europe, it takes a bit of time, a bit of convincing to get the consensus. So and a bit of fighting, obviously, because you need to show that basically you've fought in you know what was positive for your own population. But at some point, this is happening.
Yeah, there's always an election back home, right? Look, just briefly on the earnings season so far, what does it tell you about the economy? Is it something that you're looking at? Is it all backward looking? Do we write off this year as we know that there's just going to be an enormous trough? How do you view earnings season?
Exactly as you've mentioned it. To be fair, it feels a little bit like a lagging indicator confirming that we had a huge shock. And obviously, the more you lock down your economies, well, you know, the hardest the activity is hit, and basically the drawdown on profit is substantial as well. So we'd rather focus on, you know, basically we use Asia as a leading indicator in this crisis. They've reopened their economies with a bit of advance compared to Europe, and Europe will reopen with a bit of lead versus the US. So I think it's good to see what Asia is doing, how they're recovering, at what pace, which sectors first. And then I think we will eventually apply that sequence to Europe. And for now, let's be fair, Asia is recovering at an interesting pace, although it's very uneven, and they are managing the second wave. So that gives hope for the rest of the world economy.
Yeah, I hope it certainly does. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. It's been a real pleasure having you on the programme. Sami Shah is Chief Economist at Lombard Odier, so talking us through the reopening of economies here in Europe. Well, with more in terms of the global pandemic, Bloomberg's Leanne Gerrans is standing by with all the latest in global news headlines. Hi, Leanne.
Good morning, Caroline. So let's start here in the UK. And as you did mention earlier, the Health Secretary says he's very worried about a rare inflammatory disease in children, which appears to be linked to coronavirus. Matt Hancock says some youngsters with no underlying health conditions have died from the syndrome, which presents flu-like symptoms. Italian and British medical experts are investigating a possible connection. Meanwhile, Britons are being urged to stick with the lockdown. That's for now. That's as scientists are drawing up options for easing movement restrictions. Now, global confirmed coronavirus cases have passed the 3 million mark. Today, Spain and France will unveil their plans to ease restrictions on public life. Leaders are anxious to restart their economies. Still, there are concerns that moving too quickly could backfire and lead to more infections. New cases just rose in France. In Spain, they surged by less than 2,000 for a second day in a row. Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis will tell his citizens today that the time has come to start lifting restriction on movement measures. Bloomberg's Paul Tugwell has that story.
That makes the government confident it will handle well the transition to life after total lockdown. A first phase on May 4th will see the reopening of small shops and hairdressers, while at a later stage, some schools will start operating. The implementation of each step will depend on the success of the previous one. In Athens, Paul Tugwell, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
And Hong Kong will reopen government offices and some public facilities after taking cautious steps to get the city back to work. That's as daily coronavirus cases dwindle. Bloomberg's Karen Lee has more.
Government employees will start returning to offices May 4th, and authorities are preparing to open facilities, including museums and libraries, that have been closed during the pandemic. But leader Carrie Lam said Tuesday that they had yet to decide whether to extend social distancing measures beyond May 7th. In Hong Kong, Karen Lee, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg Caroline.
Thank you so much, Leanne, for that world news update. Now, there's also talk of trying to get some sporting action back up and running. Now, with the morning sports news, here's William Esler.
Silverstone confident of being able to deliver a British Grand Prix this year, even though any race would be held without fans. The circuit announced yesterday that spectators wouldn't be allowed in due to the coronavirus. It's understood F1 bosses will ask the Northamptonshire track to stage 2 Grand Prix on successive weekends. The government wants to get Premier League football back up and running as soon as possible. The Digital Culture, Media and Sports Secretary Oliver Dowden says it's vital for football at all levels that the top flight resumes. He also welcomed an advance payment from the Premier League earlier this month to support the lower divisions. All professional football in England has been suspended since the 13th of March due to the coronavirus outbreak. And FIFA have proposed teams are able to make 5 substitutions when football resumes. They say it will help players deal with the high volume of fixtures due to the backlog caused by the coronavirus. The proposal needs to be approved by the Law-Making International Football Association Board. Then it will be up to individual competitions such as the Premier League whether or not to implement it.
Okay, so that's the sports news, trying to get some Premier League football restarted. Still ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, we're going to talk about Europe's hard-hit tourism industry because they want a plan for reopening in order basically to save the summer season. Is that even possible? Coronavirus recoveries are now outpacing new cases of the disease across Europe. But is it too soon to open up tourism safely? We have the Greek Tourism Minister, Theo Harris, joining me next here on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, live from London.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Investors who put their money on the line to help build U.S. infrastructure deserve to be protected. That's what we do at BAM. Our unconditional guarantee means investors receive every payment of interest and principal when due, period. BAM insured bonds have a high AA stable rating from S&P, and BAM credit profiles provide complete transparency on each and every transaction. BAM insured bonds help build America's essential public projects. BAM, the feeling is mutual.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's David Inglis.
Gaming device maker Razer converted some of its manufacturing capacity to produce masks with a commitment to donate up to 1 million of them to health authorities across the world. Joining us now is the CEO, co-founder Min Liang Tan. I'm quite surprised actually how flexible your production capacity was to shift into masks. Are you still producing masks?
Yes, we are. We decided that we wanted to kind of give back and see how we can support the fight against COVID-19. So we converted some of our facilities in China to produce face masks. And in addition, we've just announced that we've also set up a face mask production line right in Singapore.
You've also committed $50 million this year to support business partners. Can you elaborate more on where that money is actually going to go?
What we're doing is pretty much through our three arms. We've got Razer Gold, which is a virtual credit system that many of the game companies out there use. We've got Razer FinTech, which is a fintech platform, and we process billions of dollars out there. And we've got our own corporate ventures fund. So essentially, this $50 million will be deployed through each of these three arms, specifically for our partners to help them tide through COVID-19 and potentially investing in some new companies that will be addressing this side of the business.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Good morning from Bloomberg's World Headquarters in New York City. I'm Amory Hordern with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. European equities are in the green this morning, as well as U.S. futures in New York, pointing to a higher start. We are in full swing of earnings. We had from two of the biggest corporations, one from big oil and one from big banks, BP and HSBC. Both those stocks, though, are in the red this morning. HSB cautioning that bad loan charges may climb this year, and BP, they boost their financial reserves as the pandemic hits profit. That means more debt, but they did able to save the sacred dividend. On the virus front, we all seeing some potential optimism on more testing and a vaccine potentially this year. That might be helping with some optimism in the market this Tuesday morning. In the Treasury market this morning, no massive moves. The U.S. 10-year yield is hovering around 0.65% this morning. And in terms of the currencies this morning, euro dollar and the pound both higher, 108 against the U.S. dollar on the euro, and cable 1.24. And in oil this morning, while we are seeing a risk on day everywhere except in the oil market, WTI is down nearly 20%, $10.23. The biggest U.S. oil ETF sells all of its June WTI futures. They sell the entire front month positions. Brent this morning also trading under $20 a barrel. Keep an eye on Brent. That contract expires on Thursday. We're seeing collapsing consumption, a supply gut, and storage testing limits, and that is reflected in the prices today. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Leanne Garens with more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Leanne.
Good morning, Anne-Marie, and thank you. So let's start here in the UK, where Prime Minister Boris Johnson will lead a minute's silence this morning in tribute to all frontline staff who have died in the fight against coronavirus. More than 90 NHS staff and social care workers have lost their lives during the pandemic. The nation will prepare to fall silent at 11 a.m. The coronavirus is here to stay and is likely seasonal. That's a conclusion of China's top scientists at a briefing in Beijing. They say it will likely come back in waves and summer won't necessarily lead to fewer cases. This new virus is different from SARS, as a high number of asymptomatic cases makes it even harder to contain. And President Trump says he knows how North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un is doing, and South Korea says it knows where he is, but neither is giving away any details. There have been days of speculation about Kim's health. President Trump says he can't talk about it now, but added, "I just wish him well." Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg. Caroline.
Thank you so much, Leanne Gerrans. Yeah, we had a couple of interesting conversations yesterday because the rumours were really swirling over the weekend about Kim Jong-un's health, but it seems that the mystery continues, really.
Well, I think this is the whole thing. No one has given away any details. So there's been mystery that could it be linked to the coronavirus? Could it be cardiovascular surgery? Is he gravely ill? Is he at his retreat at the seaside resort that is very popular with him? But this is just what North Korea does. They keep everyone in the dark, especially about his health. There's very strict reporting out of North Korea on the leader's health.
Yes, indeed. Obviously, the very, very secretive state. Thank you so much for that world news update from Leanne Gerrans there. Now, I want to talk a little bit about coronavirus this morning. Europe is seeking ways to get back to normal, of course. Coronavirus cases do continue to fall. Tourism is in focus. European ministers discussed how to revive the industry before the summer season on Monday, without obviously wanting to cause a new wave of infections. In their joint statement Monday, they said that tourism should be among the main priorities for the EU's recovery. I'm pleased to say joining us now is the Greek tourism minister, Haris Theoharis. Very warm welcome to the programme. Thank you so much for being with us. Greece has actually forecast that its hotels will lose more than half of their predicted revenue for 2020, and that will contribute to the economy in Greece contracting between 5 and 10%. I can understand your desire to get the tourism industry back up and running. You've talked about it being open for business sometime in July. Can the summer season really be saved?
Well, the summer season is not going to be a season like the others that we have seen in the previous years, that's for sure. It is understandable that everyone's priorities have changed during this crisis. Health and safety is the most important thing for everyone, on everyone's mind. I mean, it's important for us to stress, and we do, that we are very, very successful in dealing with this crisis. Most of our islands, for example, are COVID-free. We have very few cases. But really, this is not just about Greece. This is not just about the southern countries that depend on tourism. This is about the EU as a whole, because Europe is the most touristically developed area in the world. And unless this engine, this economic engine, restarts and revs up the cylinders, I'm afraid we will not see a lasting economic redevelopment of Europe, restart of Europe as a whole.
Okay, but do you think that there actually will be an EU-wide agreement on how to reopen tourism safely? I mean, you have talked about being open for business sometime in July, so you are moving forward with that plan?
Yes, we're aiming to at least the internal restrictive measures to lift them up and ensure that everything is in place to be able to welcome, like we have in the past 50 years, the visitors that come to Greece and they enjoy their time here. Now, whether we will have European agreement, that's a different matter. We're certainly a number of countries. You mentioned the joint statement that we signed. Believe that this should be the case, that Europe did not come into this crisis united, and as a result we had every nation, member state dealing with different in a different manner with the crisis. We have to get out of this crisis united and together. This is the time for Europe. That's what I said in yesterday's ministers' meeting. This is a time for Europe to show global leadership on the way out of this crisis and to shine, to find this as an opportunity and not just as a problem, this crisis.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining me. That's very interesting to get those details about how Europe and Greece might open up in terms of tourism. That's the Greek Tourism Minister, Theo Harris, who will also be going on to Bloomberg Television to discuss this further, of course, after that conference call between EU tourism ministers on Monday and a joint statement. Still no agreement about on EU level about opening up tourism. Much more on the markets to come. This is Bloomberg.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report, I'm Michael Barr. The NBA plans to reopen team practice facilities Friday in areas where local governments have relaxed stay-at-home restrictions amid the coronavirus pandemic. That's according to an ESPN report. Dallas Mavericks team owner Mark Cuban says playing without fans is a made-for-TV event.
I mean, we're dying for content. We're dying for teams to root for. We're dying to get excited about games and just just ready to go and cheer as a community. And so, yes, I really think that if we're able to pull it off without fans, we're certainly going to do it.
Major League Baseball games this year with no fans in the stands. That could be on deck, according to New York Governor Andrew Cuomo.
Be creative, try to figure it out. But if players could get paid more than staying home, and owners would get some revenue versus total shutdown, why not?
That is a Bloomberg Business of Sports report. I'm Michael Barr. In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Inovalon is a leading provider of cloud-based platforms empowering data-driven healthcare. Leveraging deep connectivity, the data of billions of medical events, and advanced analytics, Inovalon empowers the achievement of improved clinical outcomes and financial performance for thousands of health insurance companies, hospitals, doctors, pharmacies, and pharmaceutical companies, and the millions of patients they serve every day. Inovalon. Data has a story to tell. We give it a voice. Learn more at Inovalon.com.
Imagine. This is an important message from the government. For now, we must all still stay at home. It can be hard, but it's making a difference. So please keep going for the ones you love. Keep going for every key worker on the front line as they keep going for us. Keep going because together we will beat the virus. To all of you making sacrifices every day, thank you. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5 and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Picture in your mind a stylish Audi with striking LED headlights, sporty alloy wheels, and some of our most advanced features, including a 10-inch digital cockpit and smart assistant systems like lane departure warning. Picture what that Audi looks like. Now think smaller. The Audi A1. It's not a small car, it's a small Audi. Visit audi.co.uk. Audi. Vorsprung durch Technik.
Typical Danny. Imagine trying to unwind at a spa weekend and you wind up getting your mud pack all over your fave personalised dressing gown. But no worries. Just one wash and my clothes will smell perf with Surf. Surf gives you long-lasting fragrance with natural essential oils. Find your fragrance in Surf's laundry range.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to National Lottery players, communities across the country are about to benefit from up to £300 million of funding. Thank you.
Thank you.
Money that will help support the most vulnerable in these exceptional times.
Thank you. Thank you.
Food banks, local health organisations, charities combating loneliness, and thousands of other community causes will all get vital resources.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it's all thanks to you, playing the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen.
Stay in touch with your loved ones with great phones at great prices from Tesco Mobile. Like the incredible iPhone 7 with advanced HD front camera. Perfect for video calling. For just $13.99 a month. That's our lowest ever price. Search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 14th of June. Was £15.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements with Tesco Mobile required. Subject to status. Phased policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Broadcasting live to London on DAB Digital Radio, to New York, Bloomberg 1130, to Washington DC, Bloomberg 99.1, to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1, to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
And it's 9:30 a.m. here in London, 10:30 across Europe. I'm Caroline Hepker. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. So in the markets this morning, we actually have stocks gaining. On the US Stock 600, we're up 0.6%, although we pull back from a larger gain at the start of trading. FTSE 100 also up 0.4%, and the Xetra DAX gains 0.5%. The big news lines are on the heavyweight earnings that we've had, or earnings from heavyweight companies, I should say, UBS, HSBC, BP and others. Actually, we have UBS up by 1.3% right now because they posted a 40% rise in first quarter net profit. I'm going to bring you our interview with Sergio Amotti, the UBS CEO, in just a moment. But BP is up 0.3%. Oil prices obviously continue to plunge. WTI crude futures currently down 20% this morning at $10.13 the barrel. Brent crude at $19.05. And HSBC also manages a gain of about 1%, even though obviously the loan losses are a big concern for HSBC. But I guess their trading revenue did increase 25% for Europe's biggest lender. In terms of the bond markets at the moment, it's also a big central bank week. We had the BOJ action earlier on in the week. The Fed meeting begins today, and the decision from the ECB on Thursday. German yields at 43 basis points are up by 2 basis points. Italian BTP's 1.71% and 66 basis points for the US 10-year Treasury yield, pretty much flat at the moment. And just lastly, in terms of the FX space, I'll give you a check of the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index, weaker 0.2%, and the pound actually stronger 0.3%. Cable trading at 124.69. I think I'd say the most interesting point about European stocks, though, this morning, we're edging higher for a second day in a row, but actually we've been trading in a very narrow range, essentially for the last 3 weeks, around a 4% range. So interesting to see if any of the earnings will actually shift that, or if it's all just backward-looking data. Okay, those are the markets. I promise you our big interview of the day. Well, UBS has expressed confidence in its ability to withstand a surge in bad loans because of the coronavirus. The Swiss lender reported lower credit losses than peers like Credit Suisse, but it is warning about pressure on its key streams of income at its wealth management unit. That said, net profit surged 40% to $1.6 billion, with UBS citing the high quality of its credit portfolio among rich clients. CEO Sergio Amotti spoke to Bloomberg's Manus Cranney earlier this morning, who began by asking him how high credit losses will go in 2020.
First of all, let me point out that our credit losses during last quarter is the outcome of a strategy and a clear risk-reward priorities we put in place on how we manage the financial resources of the bank, and it's also reflecting a very effective way for us to manage risks on a short-term basis. And last but not least is also reflecting the fact that our business model sees a high degree of concentration in lending exposure in Switzerland and in general to asset-based lending, so where we have a high degree of underlying guarantees. Therefore, we can be relatively optimistic about the extent at which credit losses will impact our future. Of course, we're also going to be affected by that.
Now, in the announcement, you talked about recurring fee income, net interest income, and transaction-based income all under pressure. Is that going to come to bear on the numbers in the rest of the year?
Well, on recurring fees, it very much depends where asset levels will be, particularly equity markets. The starting point for Q2 is lower. As we indicated, we expect a contraction of around 250 million on net recurring fees. You saw that NII was stable, but of course it's going to be challenging because lower rates will continue to dent our margins on the NII front. On the other end, the fact that we are extending more loans is helping us to mitigate part of that. You see on the other end a more normalized environment in terms of transaction volumes, and we feel that the combination of all these factors, positive and negatives, in addition to the fact that we are continuing really to execute on our strategy, will help us to mitigate the negative effects. Now, our focus is really all about that, continue to perform while staying relevant to our clients and keeping our employees safe and healthy, so that they can continue to do a great job, because eventually, when you look at the first quarter, you saw really UBS at its best, and really us being able to perform, across any dimensions.
Let's talk about the word that you used twice now. We spoke a couple of weeks ago. You said, Manus, we're doing more lending, more loans. Again, you're using that phrase again today. Where are you seeing the most uplift in lending? Is it on the IB side with credit to institutions, or is it on the wealth management side? And the geography, just a little bit more colour.
We saw lending. We expanded lending by 15 billions across the board geographically, to which is in addition to what we are doing in Switzerland, where we extended 2.5 billions in the government-backed programs, and we also made a commitment in the US for another 2 billions. We extended, as I said, 15 billions of extra lending across every geographies, across all businesses. In Switzerland, for example, we extended almost 2.6 billion of extra credit to Swiss companies, 1 billion of mortgages. In wealth management, we had an expansion of lending of around 4 billions, coming up to the end of the quarters. But it's quite interesting to see, for example, that in Asia in March you saw some deleveraging. So the net number, it's all about the fact that some clients went risk on and off during the quarter. But across the board, we see lending demand is exactly what we are supposed to do and want to do at this time, to help clients to go through these difficult times, but also at the same time keeping our capital strengths, our discipline in how we manage risk, so that we can also protect the other side of the balance sheet, our depositors.
So that was the UBS CEO, Sergio Motti, there speaking about UBS's 40% first quarter net profit increase. And we see UBS shares currently up by 4.9%. So interesting to get his view, one of the heavyweights reporting this morning. Let's get over to Bloomberg's Leanne Gerrans, who's got all the latest in terms of global news. And really, I thought that the coronavirus news in the UK really couldn't get any worse, but it has.
Yes, indeed. And good morning, Caroline. And you did point this out earlier. So let's start here in the UK, where the House Secretary says he's very worried about a rare inflammatory disease in children, which appears to be linked to coronavirus. Matt Hancock says some youngsters with no underlying health conditions have died from the syndrome, which shows flu-like symptoms. Home Office Minister Victoria Atkins says any mothers and fathers who have concerns should contact the NHS.
It demonstrates just how fast-moving this virus is and how unprecedented it is in its effects. And the advice to parents is if they're worried about the recovery of their children, then they must please seek medical help.
Global confirmed virus cases have passed the 3 million mark as countries around the globe start to consider easing lockdown measures. The World Health Organization's Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus says the pandemic is far from over.
This virus will not be defeated if we're not united. If we're not united, the virus will exploit the cracks between us and continue to create havoc.
Much of Europe is moving to loosen coronavirus restrictions. Spain and France are setting out plans to ease their lockdowns today. They will follow Germany, Austria and the Netherlands in relaxing containment restrictions. But after more than 110,000 deaths on the continent, policymakers are wary of spurring a second wave of infections. And yesterday, France reported the most new cases in about 10 days, and deaths linked to the virus also rose. Bloomberg's Anya Nussbaum reports.
The news comes as the French government is poised to present its plan on Tuesday on how it will progressively end the lockdown, starting on May 11th. It's unclear how businesses and public transport will be able to reopen safely, not to mention schools. What the country fears the most is a second wave of the epidemic after easing restrictions. In Paris, Anya Nussbaum, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg. Caroline.
Thank you so much, Leanne. Coming up next on Bloomberg Daybreak, Jean Boivin, who is Global Head of Research at BlackRock, will be joining me next with his take on global growth. Scott Minard at Guggenheim says the downturn could last up to 4 years. We'll discuss next, along with the markets. This is Bloomberg.
You're fierce. You take care of business and don't hold back. Taking care of your health shouldn't be any different. You know when something's off. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, and rashes. Listen to your body. It could be lupus. We're here to help you take control. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
In today's volatile markets, investors need resilient portfolios to help handle the pressure. Through decades of expansions and recessions and changing interest rates, clients have turned to PIMCO to help them stay on course, no matter what course markets take. PIMCO, active fixed income solutions that aim to give investors an edge. All investments contain risk and may lose value. Investing in the bond market is subject to risks. Consult your investment professional prior to making an investment decision.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Vatal Shah is
the garden tools that mean you can grow your own. The fire pit that turns tea time into an alfresco dining experience. The paddling pool that turns your back garden into a water park. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of family time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided. Subject to status by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited. 18+.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5 and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list. and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
While most of us are looking out for each other at this time, sadly, fraudsters are trying to take advantage of the situation. Here's Chris Ainsley from Santander with advice for keeping your money safe.
If you're buying anything online, take care and don't pay by money transfer. Always pay by card. Take time to check the seller is genuine, and if you're unsure, then stop and don't send any money.
For more advice on keeping your money safe, visit santander.co.uk.
Want to relive the glory of college football?
Balls over a man, into the end zone.
Come explore TuneIn's classic game replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship, featuring Clemson and LSU.
There are going to be 2 champions on the field tomorrow night. There's going to be 1 team hold up the trophy.
Plays to the 5! Touchdown! Search classic game replays to listen for free.
America, your children have an amazing superpower. They can help save lives by not having play dates. That's right. By replacing get-togethers with virtual play dates and video chats, they can help slow the evil spread of germs. And if your superheroes do go outside, make sure they continue their superhero wing by staying 6 feet away from others to protect everyone in America land. Find out more at coronavirus.gov. A message from the CDC and the Ad Council.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, our writers fan out to report from across the city at the height of the coronavirus outbreak in New York.
I won't say it's business as usual, but, we still have responsibilities and we are handling everything. But, I'm not going to let COVID beat me.
That's the New Yorker Radio Hour from WNYC Studios. Listen to this episode on TuneIn today.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
With millions of podcasts dropping new episodes all the time, how do you keep up with all of your favorites? TuneIn makes it easy. Simply head to the home screen and find the Your New Episode section to see the latest additions.
News 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg's world headquarters in New York City, I'm Anna Marie Hodern with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. I want to begin in the oil market. We had a red headline break on the Bloomberg Turbo that S&P Global, the company that is behind the most popular commodity index, is rolling over all their exposure out of the WTI front month from June into July with immediate effect. This is because they potentially think it could go negative again. This morning, WTI is down more than 20%, $10.20. Everyone just seems to be running away from this front month contract. Brent this morning is trading at $19.09. That's risk off for the oil market, but risk on everywhere else. We're seeing U.S. equity futures on the front foot, S&P 500 mini up 0.3%. We are seeing European equities also in the green this morning. Euro Stoxx 50 up 0.7%. FTSE 100 up nearly 0.4%. Some decent gains, relatively small, but we are seeing in the green as we are in full flood of earnings. We heard from HSBC and BP this morning. In the U.S., we're waiting, of course, this week, some big tech names like Amazon, Facebook, and Apple. In currencies this morning, the British pound is up 1.24, 0.3% against the U.S. dollar, and then the euro's up 0.2%, 1.08. And then in the bond market, let me leave you with the 10-year yield. No massive moves. We're hovering at 0.66% on the 10-year handle. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Leanne Garrens with more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Leanne.
Good morning, Anne-Marie, and thank you. Let's start here in the UK, where Britons are being urged to stick with the lockdown for now. That's as scientists are drawing up options for easing movement restrictions. Chancellor Rishi Sunak is also mulling how to gradually unwind support for businesses. Chief Medical Officer Chris Whitty is warning that coming months are fraught with uncertainty. Staying here in the UK, Prime Minister Boris Johnson will lead a minute's silence this morning in tribute to all frontline staff who have died in the fight against coronavirus. More than 90 NHS and social care workers have lost their lives during the pandemic. The nation is preparing to fall silent at 11 a.m. And today, Spain and France will unveil their plans to ease restrictions on public life. Leaders are anxious to restart their economies. Still, there are concerns that moving too quickly could backfire and lead to even more infections. New cases just rose in France and Spain. They rose by less than 2,000 for the second day in a row. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg Caroline.
Thank you so much for that world news update. Well, coming up next, our colleagues in the United States are getting ready for Bloomberg Daybreak. So, as usual, we'll check in with Nathan Hager. Good morning, Nathan. What's ahead for you?
Well, this morning, Caroline, we're looking at the pressure to reopen the U.S. economy while the coronavirus pandemic continues. The White House just put out a new strategy to expand testing for COVID-19. But a handful of states in this country aren't waiting. They're already taking baby steps to reopen, even as there are signs the coronavirus might not be the kind of disease that just goes away as we head into the warmer months. We're going to have all the details on this new strategy, and we'll speak with Savita Subramanian of Bank of America Securities on where market sentiment may be headed as we head not just into this gradual reopening, but through the heart of earnings season this week. And we will also check in with Tom Porcelli, RBC Capital's chief U.S. economist, to get his view on this strategy and what it could mean for the recovery. Karen Moskow's with me. Hope you will be as well for Bloomberg Daybreak Americas. Caroline.
Great. Sounds really good. Thank you so much, Nathan. Bloomberg Daybreak, as Nathan mentioned, is up next. And if you're listening on London DAB Digital Radio, you'll hear Bloomberg surveillance. So interesting that Nathan mentioned the opening up. It does seem to be a bit more of a reality in Europe, less so in the UK. We're being told to hang on in Britain. The lockdown's still very much in place, even though we have started to see coronavirus deaths really come down. On Monday, 360 hospital deaths reported. So perhaps we are coming through the wave of coronavirus. But let's talk a little bit more about the easing of lockdown measures. Spain and France are set to announce a loosening of those measures today. It comes as countries hope to restart their economies and maybe mitigate some of the impact of the pandemic on the economy. Jean Boivin is Global Head of Research at BlackRock and joins me this morning. Really good to speak to you, Jean. Thanks for joining me. So you're formerly, of course, a Bank of Canada and Deputy Finance Minister official. And so I'm interested to know, in this week where we have important central bank decisions, the BOJ earlier, the Fed begins the meeting today, the ECB on Thursday, do you think that we're actually asking too much of central bankers right now?
So we think, yes, good morning. Thank you for having me. The shock we're going through is unprecedented in the near term. That has been said many times, and even the word unprecedented is used on the unprecedented fashion. But that calls for decisive and rapid action. And what we've seen over the course of only a few weeks is just a policy revolution. So I think this is the remedy for the situation we're going through. So I don't think this is asking too much. It is what is needed. We need to innovate to make sure that we are preventing this economic crisis, which starts from a natural disaster, to become a financial crisis. So we're not there yet. So I think these policy steps are required. But they have opened the door to very significant questions going forward in terms of, blurring the distinction between fiscal and monetary policy and how we exit from this.
Yeah. Look, how do you see the shape of the global economic recovery now? I mean, you mentioned that good steps have been taken, but Goldman Sachs, I noticed this morning, talking about Southern European countries seeing an enormous spike in unemployment numbers, and that's a big fear that the hit in Europe is going to be devastating.
It is. is devastating in the near term, and in peacetime we will have never seen a contraction of that magnitude. I think the challenge for all of us is to, while we need to acknowledge the drastic contraction that we're going through in the near term, it's what's going to really matter for economies and for markets is how long it lasts. So we've been saying that it's less about how deep, because we know it's going to be deep. It's visible. We're actually all contributing to make that deep. But it's really how long it's going to last. And that's where, like what you were mentioning before, the path forward in terms of relaxation of the containment measure is key. And whether we're successful both at containing the virus and at the same time restarting the economy. And none of these two things are a given at this stage.
Yeah. A lot of businesses, market participants, see opportunities in distressed debt. So kind of looking at it from a different lens now. I mean, just the latest is Boundary Creek Advisors. They're eyeing $1 billion credit fund. How do you measure the level of distressed debt in Europe? And surely it's going to get an awful lot worse in the coming 3 months. So is it an area of opportunity perhaps for some?
So, in broad terms, I would make a couple of observations. The first one is, from a long-term perspective, if we really manage to, prevent a financial tension to turn into financial crisis, the long-term prospect implies that the move we've seen in risk assets and price going down drastically in March was creating a lot of value and opportunity. So that some of it has been already materializing with a 32% rally in U.S. equities since the trough. But from a long-term basis, we think there's reasons to be overweight risk assets. That's point number one. I think point number two is this policy-backed tailwind that we're talking about here for credit in particular is very, very significant. We are still seeing, spreads for debt instrument that are pretty wide, consistent with default rates that are, high. And to the extent that, we have commitment from the policy side to really, back up and prevent those massive waves of defaults, that should be a starting point for broad opportunities in the credit space. Of course, the strength of balance sheet will be key in determining what are these opportunities.
Okay. You've also talked about execution, basically, to help economies in Europe being very, very important, sort of going back to the idea of government and central bank support. How do you assess the effectiveness of Europe's measures? Lots of praise for actually having gotten the measures out there, but do you see that they're actually working? A debate in the UK is struggling to get those loans and grants out to businesses.
Yeah, so execution for us is we've been putting these signposts to try to gauge the near term and navigate where we think directionally markets should go based on these signposts. So the first one was getting ultimate visibility on the scale of the issue. I think we have gotten some visibility, but we're not out of the wood on that front yet. As I mentioned, the second was on the policy response. I think we've seen the signposts in terms of size and speed. And so on that front, I think we're pretty constructive. The real issue is more on execution, and the challenge here is that these are policies that are meant to go direct. It's about bring money in the pocket of entities that need it at this time, and time is of the essence. And it's not clear that the pipes are there in place. So we've seen pretty rapid attempt to put these pipes in place, and in the UK, the intent and the measures are being deployed, but it is so what we need to watch is first whether the money is showing up where it needs to. So the companies, if employment needs to get it, and then we need to see if the tension or default rates are increasing.
Okay. Jean, thank you so much for joining me this morning on Bloomberg Radio. That's Jean Boivin, head of BlackRock's Investment Institute. Thank you for being on Bloomberg Radio. And of course, you can catch more with Jean because he's going on to Bloomberg Television next. Just type TV Go on your terminal. This is Bloomberg.
You knew the risks when you decided.
Oh. Just there, Dave. Smashing. Great.
really?
Night, Steve.
Yeah, see ya. Built to take the big knocks. Samsung rugged devices. Easy to use, hard to break. Explore the Samsung rugged range.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has ignored a call on purpose? Tick. Talked yourself out of a workout? Tick. Spent far too long scrolling on your phone? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5 and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks to National Lottery players, communities across the country are about to benefit from up to £300 million of funding.
Thank you. Thank you.
Money that will help support the most vulnerable in these exceptional times.
Thank you. Thank you.
Food banks, local health organisations, charities combating loneliness, and thousands of other community causes will all get vital resources.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it's all thanks to you, playing the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Tuesday, April 28th, 2020. Coming up this hour.
The White House lays out plans to expand coronavirus testing.
Texas, Ohio, and Florida make moves to get business back to normal.
The second round of small business relief gets off to a rocky start.
And oil craters again, igniting fears of another round of negative prices.
New York Governor Cuomo extends shutdown orders, plus President Trump says he knows how North Korea's Kim Jong-un is doing, but can't say. I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. We're learning more about when the baseball season might begin and contingency plans being made by the NFL.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Karen Moscow.
I'm Nathan Hager. Bloomberg Daybreak brought to you by BNY Mellon's Pershing. Learn why the world's most sophisticated advisory firms and broker-dealers rely on Pershing to help them improve profitability, create efficiency, attract talent, and manage risk at Pershing.com.
And U.S. futures are gaining this morning. 5:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up 8 points. Dow futures up 97, and NASDAQ futures up 36. The DAX in Germany is up 0.6%. CAC in Paris up 1/3%, and the FTSE 100 is up 0.4%. Nikkei 225 in Japan, little change, down less than 0.1%. And Hang Seng in Hong Kong was up 1.2%. 10-year Treasury, little change, yield 0.65%. The yield on the 2-year 0.21%. NYMEX crude oil is down about 20%, down $2.51 at $10.27 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.5% or $9.30 at $17.1450 an ounce. The euro 1.0848 against the dollar. The yen 107.05. Nathan.
Karen, the White House is laying out plans to expand coronavirus testing.
We are continuing to rapidly expand our capacity and confident that we have enough testing to begin reopening and the reopening process. We want to get our country open.
The Trump administration is issuing new guidance for states to build testing capacity. That, it says, will provide enough tests to screen at least 2% of residents in each state.
Our blueprint describes how states should unlock their full capacity, expand the number of testing platforms, establish monitoring systems to detect local outbreaks, and conduct contact tracing. We have it all.
The plan includes retailers opening up testing locations across the country. CVS will open sites at 1,000 stores. Walgreens will offer tests in 49 states. And Quest Diagnostics says it will double testing capacity by the end of May.
Meantime, some governors are moving ahead with reopening states ahead of expanding testing capacity. And Bloomberg's Tom Busby joins us now with the details. Good morning, Tom.
Well, good morning, Karen and Nathan. Texas is relaxing restrictions on retail stores, restaurants, movie theaters, and malls, despite projections from the University of Washington showing hospitalizations and fatalities on the rise. Ohio announced more incremental measures, allowing manufacturing to resume and offices to reopen next week. Data show the outbreak beginning to decline in Ohio, but not for the 14 days outlined by the White House. In Florida, the state's 3 most populous counties are reopening parks and golf courses in a limited capacity. The counties account for 60% of corona cases in Florida, while projections show the state just coming off its peak for hospitalizations and deaths. I'm Tom Busby, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Tom, thanks. The virus could be here to stay. That's according to top scientists in China, who warned COVID-19 is not likely to be eradicated. Here with details is Bloomberg Daybreak Asia anchor Brian Curtis in Hong Kong.
The researchers say better get used to it. This virus will likely come back in waves like the flu. This coronavirus infects some people without causing obvious symptoms like fever, and asymptomatic carriers make it hard to fully contain transmission, as they can spread the virus undetected. The scientists say they see no evidence the virus will go away in summer. In Hong Kong, Brian Curtis, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Brian, thank you. Here in the U.S., small business has been hit hard by the pandemic. After a fresh round of funding, the relief program for small firms relaunched yesterday and got off to a rocky start. For details, we bring in Martin DeCaro from our Bloomberg 99.1 newsroom in Washington.
Lenders report being shut out of the Small Business Administration's overwhelmed system. The SBA says unprecedented demand slowed its loan processing platform, with double the number of users accessing the system compared to any day during the initial round of funding. By all accounts, this second round of cash will run out fast. Some lenders had thousands of applications waiting to go when the system restarted yesterday. JP Morgan Chase says it stopped taking new applications before the initiative relaunched because it was still working through a backlog of requests in its pipeline. In Washington, Martin DeCaro, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Martin, thanks. Looking at the markets now, oil is the big mover again today. West Texas Intermediate crude is extending declines after yesterday's 25% drop. And joining us live at the very latest is Bloomberg's John Tucker. Good morning, John.
And good morning, Nathan. The drop in prices comes as the biggest oil exchange traded fund begins selling all its holdings of the most active WTI contract as storage capacity dries up. The United States Oil Fund sold all its June contracts, and that's raising concern that crude could head below zero again. We spoke with BP CEO Bernard Looney about the collapse in demand.
We expect demand in the second quarter to be down in the world around 16 million barrels a day. Now, that's 5 times the previous record for demand destruction. That's the type of destruction that we are seeing.
NYMEX crude is down 19% right now, down $2.44 a barrel at $10.34. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. Meantime, we have earnings from BP showing that demand destruction is slashing profits. And the worst is yet to come. The company expects the coronavirus outbreak to reduce production and have a material impact on refining in the second quarter. As a result, BP is boosting its financial reserves with a new $10 billion credit facility and a $7 billion bond sale. Shares are down 1.5% in London.
UBS is out with earnings that beat estimates. The Swiss bank posted a 40% jump in profit and says it can withstand a surge in bad loans stemming from the pandemic. At the same time, UBS says the COVID-19 outbreak will put pressure on income streams at its wealth management business. Shares are up more than 4.5% in Zurich. S&P futures are higher by 11 points right now. Dow futures a gain of 127 points. NASDAQ futures higher by 42 points this morning. Straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg. And at 5:07 on Wall Street, we bring in Michael Barr to get a check of what's going on around the world. Good Tuesday morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is extending shutdown orders beyond the current mid-May mandate for much of the state. Cuomo says even though the curve is flattening, there are still too many lives lost to COVID-19 every day.
I will extend them in many parts of the state, but in some parts of the state, some regions, you could make the case that we should unpause on May 15th.
Cuomo said yesterday there were 337 new deaths reported in the past 24 hours. Meanwhile, 28 New York City teachers have died of the virus. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy laid out a 6-point plan for when it's safe for his state to reopen.
For us to move out from underneath this order, we need to see at the least a sustained reduction in the number of new positive COVID-19 test results, new COVID-19 related hospitalizations, and other metrics.
Murphy also says he needed to extend the state's stay-at-home order indefinitely. President Trump weighed in on the health of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, saying that he has a very good idea about his condition, but would not elaborate.
I do have a very good idea, but I can't talk about it now. I just wish him well. I've had a very good relationship with Kim Jong-un. If I weren't president, you'd be in war. You would have been in war with Korea. You would have been in war with North Korea if I wasn't president. That I can tell you. He expected that. That I can tell you. I hope he's fine. I do know how he's doing, relatively speaking.
Kim has not been seen in public for more than 2 weeks. President Trump is disputing reports he may try to delay or postpone next fall's election. The president says he never even thought of changing the date. Gun stores and golf courses got the green light to reopen in one New Mexico city where the mayor is bucking state directives that aim to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. The mayor of Grants, Martin Hicks, said they at first played along with public health orders that shuttered everything but stores and activities deemed essential. Hicks said the cooperation ended when Democratic Governor Grisham said the state would extend those orders until at least May 15th. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Thanks, Michael. It's 5:09 on Wall Street. Let's get the Bloomberg Sports Update now. Good morning, John Stashower.
All right, good morning, Nathan. The speculation continues concerning the return of sports. How, where, most importantly, when. ESPN is reporting a growing optimism about there at least being a 2020 baseball season, with that Arizona plan of players being sequestered. They're now considered unlikely. There has been pushback from players, but that there could be a return of training in June and a regular season going from July through October and the postseason in November. While the NFL is set to release a normal schedule in a couple of weeks, it's also working on a contingency of starting in October, eliminating bye weeks and pushing the Super Bowl back. The English Premier League could resume its season in June, and it certainly appears that if there are Stanley Cup playoffs, they'll be in the summer months. The players miss the games. Here's the Rangers' 22-year-old defenseman from Long Island, Adam Fox.
You know, obviously, being from New York and playing for the Rangers, obviously this took a big hit on New York and New York City. So, just hoping everyone's staying safe, and I definitely want to get hockey back soon. So, hopefully we could do that, and obviously, make things a little better now.
When we last saw the Rangers, they were fighting to make the playoffs. Will the Giants be able to keep Marcus Golden, who had 10 sacks last season, was perhaps their best defensive player? He's a free agent. Giants have tendered him, which means if he's not signed by another team by July 22nd, they get to keep him. The lawyer for Tulane basketball player Tashawn Hightower says his client is innocent. Hightower's been charged with murder in Georgia. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan.
All right, John, thanks. Now, if sports don't resume this year, look for Walt Disney to be one of the most impacted companies. NFL and college football account for almost 50% of sports viewership on Disney's ESPN and ABC networks. Bloomberg Intelligence says a cancellation of the college football season alone would wipe out $1.8 billion in industry ad revenue, plus the lack of live games would put pressure on ESPN's $10 billion in affiliate fees. Futures pointing to a higher open this morning on Wall Street. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
While most of us are looking out for each other at this time, sadly, fraudsters are trying to take advantage of the situation. Here's Chris Ainsley from Santander with advice for keeping your money safe.
Please be wary of people you've met online who claim to be stranded abroad and urgently need money. Always take time to think before you act, and if you think you're the victim of fraud, then let your bank know right away.
For more advice on keeping your money safe, visit santander.co.uk.
This is a message from the government to all essential workers. You're doing vital jobs to keep our country going, and you can now get tested for coronavirus. From health professionals to emergency services, from delivery drivers to grocery workers, from teachers to care workers. Tests are available for you and anyone in your household who has symptoms. For a full list of all essential workers eligible and how to get a test, go to gov.uk/coronavirus.
Brian Windhorst and the Hoop Collective podcast.
What about Giannis Antetokounmpo? He is going to be eligible to sign a Supermax extension, which we were projecting to be worth $240 million this summer. Well, if the salary cap drops, and even if he's wonderfully happy in Milwaukee, it may make no sense for him to sign when he can just wait a year and wait for the revenues to recover and then lock in.
Subscribe to Brian Windhorst and the Hoop Collective.
Search the Hoop Collective to listen. Here's David Inglis.
Gaming device maker Razer converted some of its manufacturing capacity to produce masks with a commitment to donate up to 1 million of them to health authorities across the world. Joining us now is the CEO, co-founder Min Liang Tan. I'm quite surprised actually how flexible your production capacity was to shift into masks. Are you still producing masks?
Yes, we are. We decided that we wanted to kind of give back and see how we can support the fight against COVID-19. So we converted some of our facilities in China to produce face masks. And in addition, we've just announced that we've also set up a face mask production line right in Singapore.
You've also committed $50 million this year to support business partners. Can you elaborate more on where that money is actually going to go?
What we're doing is pretty much through our three arms. We've got Razer Gold, which is a virtual credit system that many of the game companies out there use. We've got Razer FinTech, which is a fintech platform, and we process billions of dollars out there. And we've got our own corporate ventures fund. So essentially, this $50 million will be deployed through each of these three arms, specifically for our partners to help them tide through COVID-19 and potentially investing in some new companies that will be addressing this side of the business.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. European and Asian shares are climbing alongside U.S. stock index futures as the earnings season gathers pace and governments contemplate reopening their economies. Crude oil extending sharp losses after plunging on Monday. Right now, NYMEX crude is down almost 15%, down $1.91 at $10.87 a barrel. S&P futures are higher. They're up 16 points. Dow futures up 165. NASDAQ futures up 57. The DAX in Germany's up 0.8%. 10-year Treasury, little change. Yield 0.66%. Yield on the 2-year, 0.21%. COMEX gold is down 0.4% or $6.30 at $17.60 an ounce. The euro, 1.0850 against the dollar. British pound, 1.2463. And the yen is at 107. And on the earnings front, companies including PepsiCo, Caterpillar, Merck, and Alphabet are among those scheduled to report today. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. President Trump discussed new coronavirus testing guidelines along with reopening businesses and touched on the economy. Speaking from the White House Rose Garden, the president says the third and fourth quarter will be spectacular, but, quoting now, what happens in second happens in second. There are close to 1 million cases of coronavirus in the U.S., and about 56,000 people have died, according to Johns Hopkins University. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un may have missed a key holiday on April 15th because of concerns over the coronavirus, not because he is ill. That's what South Korea's Minister for North Korean Affairs is now saying. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump said he knows the health condition of Kim and indicated he's alive, but declined to say how he knew or provided details. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
All right, Michael, thanks. It's 5:19 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak, and Savita Subramanian joins us now, head of U.S. Equity and Quant Strategy at Bank of America Securities. Good to have you on with us this morning as we look at Wall Street poised for another day of gains, perhaps, this morning. Do you think these new testing guidelines we heard from the White House and the gradual reopening of business in some states will give a lasting lift to equity markets, Savita?
Yeah, that's the question. And, I think that at this point, it feels like all of the good news is priced into the market. I think that what we're going to see unfold over the next few months is volatility, a pretty big trading range for the S&P 500. But I think that the idea that we're going to see more of a V-shaped recovery is priced into equities. And the slow reopening of the U.S. economy does feel like that is reflected in the valuations of stocks. I mean, what's surprising is that the PE ratio of the S&P 500 is back to the mid-February high levels, simply because prices have come back so strongly and earnings have actually been revised down pretty aggressively this year. So, it doesn't feel great to buy stocks at the same PE that we saw at the peak in February, right before the bear market. But I do think that, we're going to see sort of a broader trading range ensue. I think the most bullish argument we can make for the S&P 500 is sentiment and positioning, because I think that, we're still at a point where investors are relatively light in equities and cash sitting on the sidelines is still pretty high. So that would argue that we could see more buying pressure than selling pressure.
How do you take advantage of this divergence we're seeing between forward earnings per share and valuations, these elevated valuations we're seeing in stocks right now?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I think that what we need to do, like the math we need to do, is to think about the world, I guess, after coronavirus, after we all go back to work, or, some of us go back to work, and what do normalized earnings look like for different industries? Do they change a lot because of this sort of economic shutdown period that we've gone through? And I think the answer is mostly no, but there are some cases where you do see some changes in kind of run rate earnings estimates. So, I think that where we could continue to see upside are in areas of the market that are quite depressed, but could snap back more quickly. So I think it's interesting. If you look at China's kind of a few months ahead of us. And the sectors where you've seen production and capacity really come back and inflect very positively are financials, select manufacturing industries. So I think those are areas that could recover quickly first. And then, maybe the consumer is more of a limp along recovery because of impaired confidence, et cetera. And then, I think we need to think about things like, will companies be renting as much office space, in the next 10 years as they have over the last 10 years? Maybe not, because we realize we can all work from home, or a lot of us can. So there are some things that I think change, and that's where we need to sort of haircut our earnings expectations and then look at valuations and see what really looks attractive versus expensive.
So given that, are you saying like retail and other consumer-focused sectors might be underweight right now?
Yeah, so I think what's a little bit nerve-wracking is that you've seen a pretty strong recovery in a lot of the areas that are associated with the consumer since the market lows. But if you think about the consumer over the next few quarters, we are already seeing an aggressively high unemployment rate. We're already seeing a pretty strong decrease in consumer confidence. We're living through what looks like the worst recession in the post-war era. So I think it's a little bit Pollyanna-ish to think that the consumer is just going to come right back to the malls, spend money the way they were spending it before. I think that's where we really need to think about a slower recovery based on, real impairment in consumer confidence and just, the risks around employment. I mean, our economists are forecasting a 10% unemployment rate at the end of the year. That is not a setup in which consumers feel great about buying, big ticket items.
Savita Subramanian, thanks for being on with us this morning. That's Savita Subramanian, head of U.S. equity and quant strategy at Bank of America Securities. Risk on this morning as we take a look at equity markets. S&P futures are higher by 25 points at the moment. Dow futures up 241. NASDAQ futures a gain of 83 points. DAX in Germany's up 1.1%. CAC in Paris up 1%. 10-year little changed. The yield is at 0.66%, and the yield on a 2-year note, 0.21%. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Another round of small business relief opens up and another round of frustration ensues. Lenders reported being shut out of the overwhelmed Small Business Administration system yesterday as they tried to submit applications on behalf of businesses hit hard by the coronavirus pandemic fallout. The SBA said unprecedented demand was slowing things down. As of 3:30 p.m. Washington, D.C. time, the agency had processed more than 100,000 applications from more than 4,000 lenders. JetBlue is going to require customers wear face coverings during travel, a first for U.S. carriers in the age of the pandemic. Under the new policy starting May 4th, passengers will have to cover their nose and mouth throughout their trip from check-in to exiting the airplane after the flight. United, Delta, and American Airlines already require some employees to wear face masks or will be doing so soon. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new.
I can find and fund my car, from a Mini to a Jaguar.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying all in one place.
Shouldn't be a carry on, choose findandfundmycar.com.
The loungewear essentials that ease you into your comfort zone. The fit
Fitbit that helps you step up your fitness goals. The yoga mat that turns your lounge into a studio. With a choice of ways to pay, you can enjoy being the best possible you. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has ignored a call on purpose? Tick. Talked yourself out of a workout? Tick. Spent far too long scrolling on your phone? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5 and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Fraudsters are getting more and more sophisticated, and it's easier than ever for people to make an honest mistake and lose their money. TSB doesn't think anyone should have to pay for being an innocent victim of fraud on their account. That's why they've created the TSB Fraud Refund Guarantee. To find out more, visit tsb.co.uk. Terms and conditions apply.
This is an important message from the government. For now, we must all still stay at home. It can be hard, but it's making a difference. So please keep going for the ones you love. Keep going for every key worker on the front line as they keep going for us. Keep going because together we will beat the virus. To all of you making sacrifices every day, thank you. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
Helen is dreaming of fighting a flock of 40-foot flamingos. But in reality, she's helping fight COVID-19 in her sleep. Like thousands of others, she's joined the Dream Team. By using the Dream Lab app, they're helping scientists speed up the search for potential treatments. I'll fight you. Keep fighting, Helen. Search Vodafone Dream Lab and join the Dream Team tonight.
Dream Lab app is owned by Vodafone Foundation, an independent charity. Registration number 1089625. Full terms at vodafone.co.uk/dreamlab.
Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston. Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco. Bloomberg 960. To the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
And it's 5:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We're just about 4 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. U.S. futures are higher as the White House ramps up plans to expand coronavirus testing.
We're accelerating testing for Americans at retail locations across the country.
The plan calls for CVS to open testing sites at 1,000 stores. Walgreens will offer tests in 49 states, and Quest Diagnostics will double testing capacity over the next month.
We're doing everything in our power to heal the sick and to gradually reopen our nation and to safely get our people back to work.
President Trump says there'll be enough tests to screen at least 2% of residents in each state.
In the meantime, some governors are moving ahead with reopening their states ahead of expanded testing capacity. Here with more is Bloomberg's Tom Busby.
Texas is relaxing restrictions on retail stores, restaurants, movie theaters, and malls. Ohio announced more incremental measures, allowing manufacturing to resume and offices to reopen next week. In Florida, the state's 3 most populous counties are reopening parks and golf courses. The counties account for 60% of corona cases in Florida. I'm Tom Busby, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Tom, thank you. Looking at the markets now, oil is the big mover again today. West Texas Intermediate crude is extending declines after yesterday's 25% drop. Joining us live with the very latest is Bloomberg's John Tucker. Good morning, John.
And good morning, Karen. The biggest oil exchange-traded fund is selling all holdings of the most active WTI contract as storage capacity dries up. The United States Oil Fund sold all its June contracts, and that's raising concern that crude could head below zero again. Stephen Shork is an oil analyst and president of the Shork Group.
There is no demand
the economy is dead. We're not in a recession. We're in a Great Depression. It's bad, and it's only getting worse from here.
And checking NYMEX crude right now, it is down almost 10%, down $1.25 at $11.52 a barrel. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thanks. BP's out with earnings showing that drop in demand slashing profits. The company expects the COVID-19 outbreak to reduce production and have a material impact on refining in the second quarter. Shares of BP are actually higher by 0.5% in London.
And UBS is out with earnings that beat estimates. The Swiss bank posted a 40% jump in profit and said it can withstand a surge in bad loans stemming from the coronavirus pandemic. Shares are up more than 5% in Zurich. S&P futures are up 26 points this morning. Dow futures up 257, and NASDAQ futures are up 88. 10-year Treasury, little change, yield 0.66%. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news, and this is Bloomberg.
All right, thanks, Karen. It's 5:33 now on Wall Street, and Michael Barr is here with the latest world and national news headlines. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. Parts of New York State could start to reopen when coronavirus shutdown regulations expire May 15th. But Governor Andrew Cuomo says he plans to extend the shutdown rules past that date in many parts of the state, including the New York City area. He says life will be different, but can be better if New Yorkers are smart.
Sometimes it takes a crisis to wake people up, and it takes a crisis to change the body politic to actually accept change.
Cuomo said yesterday that 337 people died in the past 24 hours, but hospitalizations are basically flat. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy says his state is far from reopening for business as the spread of COVID-19 is still going on. But Murphy laid out a 6-point plan for when it's safe for his residents to leave their homes and get back to work. Murphy says he mapped out 4 of the 6 points on how the virus needs to be contained.
Meeting these 4 benchmarks, a sustained drop in the curve, expanded testing, contact tracing, and safe places for people to isolate, is critical to giving our residents confidence that we are not only in front of the crisis, but that when we do restart our economy, they should not fear going out and being a part of it.
New Jersey's death toll passed the 6,000 mark. Attorney General William Barr directed top Justice Department prosecutors to take legal action against state and local officials if their coronavirus restrictions go too far. Barr says the Constitution is not suspended in times of crisis. An Illinois judge ruled that Governor Pritzker's stay-at-home order violated the liberty of state lawmaker Darren Bailey, who sued to block the measure. Pritzker called it insulting. President Trump says he knows the health status of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and suggested that the world would be hearing additional details in the not-too-distant future, but declined to elaborate further. The president spoke about Kim at a White House news conference yesterday.
I can't tell you exactly. Yes, I do have a very good idea, but I can't talk about it now. I just wish him well.
Meanwhile, top South Korean officials said they know Kim Jong-un's location. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Thanks, Michael. It's 5:35 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Here's John Stashauer.
Nathan, the baseball season should have been a month in by now. There's an ESPN report that there will be a season with games played in a few different places. The new billion-dollar stadium in Arlington, Texas is now seen as a likely spot. The regular season would be reduced to 80 to 100 games. The NBA had said that with some states opening, teams' facilities can as well this Friday. They have now pushed that back to a week from Friday. Atlanta is open, but the Hawks were said to be hesitant about bringing players back in. Reportedly, the Lakers have asked the city of LA for permission to open their facility. And speaking of the Lakers, they applied for relief and were granted $4.5 million in the federal payback protection program intended for small businesses. Lakers have over 300 employees and are valued at $4 billion. They have returned the money. Marcus Golden of the Giants remains an unsigned free agent, but the Giants tendered him, something not done often. It means he can still talk to other teams, but if he's not signed by July 22nd, he stays with the Giants. Golden had 10 sacks last season. Deshaun Hightower was Tulane's leading scorer. He had announced he was leaving school for the NBA draft. Now he's in jail in Georgia, charged with murder. His lawyer says it was his brother who did the shooting, and it was in self-defense. April 28th, this date in New York sports history, 1985, the Yankees fired manager Yogi Berra just 16 games into the season, hired for the fourth time Billy Martin, who wouldn't last long. He would return a few years later. Yogi didn't speak with George Steinbrenner for 14 years. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan?
All right, John, thank you. It is 5:37 on Wall Street, and coming up today, quarterly results from Alphabet will set the tone for tech earnings. The company reports after the close of U.S. trading. And here with more is Bloomberg's Larry Kofsky.
Alphabet's exposure to the travel sector will pressure its results, according to Bloomberg Intelligence. Its cloud segment is seen as a bright spot, as engagement on its G Suite app skyrocketed with more people working from home. Investors will be focused on cues for the second quarter, with analysts forecasting a sales decline of 3%. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Larry, thank you. It's just before 5:38 on Wall Street. Time for the Tri-State Business Report now with Bloomberg's Ed Corey.
New York officials are planning for an initial round of about $10 billion in spending cuts from a $177 billion state budget enacted at the beginning of April. Tax receipts have been hammered by the coronavirus pandemic since the last formal revenue estimate in mid-February, according to the state. Amazon is being investigated by New York's top law enforcement officer. New York State Attorney General Letitia James is looking into whether the company violated federal employment laws or whistleblower protections by dismissing the head of a Staten Island warehouse walkout. JetBlue will require customers to wear face coverings during travel. That's a first for U.S. carriers in the age of the coronavirus pandemic. Under the new policy, starting May 4th, passengers will have to cover their nose and mouth throughout the trip. The New York-based carrier is also asking customers to follow the same rule in airport terminals. That's your Bloomberg Tri-State Business Report. I'm Ed Corey.
All right, Ed, thank you. It is 5:39 on Wall Street. Bloomberg Radio is on the air from San Francisco to New York, London to Hong Kong. Let's check in with our global news team for some of the top stories heard on our 300 affiliate radio stations around the world.
I'm Courtney Donahoe on KRLD in Dallas. Southwest Airlines is in talks about raising billions of dollars in financing.
I'm Jeff Bellinger, and on WIOD in Miami, I'm reporting that United Parcel Service plans to deliver medications to a Florida retirement community by drone.
I'm Caroline Heck on Bloomberg DAB Digital Radio in London. We're reporting on BP bolstering its financial reserves as its profits plunge due to the virus.
I'm Gina Cervetti, and for WBBM in Chicago, I'm reporting that the White House is teaming up with Walgreens, other retailers, and diagnostics companies to expand coronavirus testing sites across the country.
I'm Ed Corey on WWJ in Detroit. I'm reporting General Motors CEO is taking a slight pay cut.
And those are some of the stories our 2,700 Bloomberg journalists and analysts are working on this morning around the world. It is 5:40 on Wall Street. The latest edition of Bloomberg Business Week is online now with the cover on Wuhan reopening after the coronavirus. Read all about it, businessweek.com. Terminal customers can receive a complimentary subscription at MAG Go. And listen to Business Week with Carol Massar and Jason Kelly right here on Bloomberg Radio, or watch it on YouTube weekdays from 2 to 6 p.m. Wall Street time. Get global business, finance, and tech news on your TV, computer, or mobile device. Just head over to youtube.com and search Bloomberg Global News. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE SIPC.
This is your Bloomberg Real Estate Report.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to National Lottery players, communities across the country are about to benefit from up to £300 million of funding.
Thank you. Thank you.
Money that will help support the most vulnerable in these exceptional times.
Thank you. Thank you.
Food banks, local health organisations, charities combating loneliness, and thousands of other community causes will all get vital resources.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it's all thanks to you, playing the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen.
This is an important message from the government. For now, we must all still stay at home. It can be hard, but it's making a difference. So please keep going for the ones you love. Keep going for every key worker on the front line as they keep going for us. Keep going because together we will beat the virus. To all of you making sacrifices every day, thank you. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
This is another ad for QuickFit. If you're still using your car for essential journeys, this one's for you. QuickFit want you to know that their centres around the country are still open, but only to carry out essential work and maintenance. They're taking extra measures to keep their staff and customers safe, so you can be safe when you're out on the roads. For more information or to find your local centre, visit quickfit.com. QuickFit, still there when you need them.
To help make the most of your time at home, TuneIn is sharing our top activities for social distancing. Tip number 4, relax. Don't feel like you have to be productive during these stressful days? This is the perfect time to focus on yourself. Whether that means meditating, taking a bath, sleeping in, or doing nothing at all, take a deep breath and treat yourself. For more indoor inspiration, search Listen from Home on TuneIn.
TikTok on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
Special report, coronavirus update. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says the Senate will return to the Capitol next Monday. More from correspondent Linda Kenyon.
The May 4th opening comes despite the stay-at-home order that remains in effect in Washington, D.C. until at least May 15th. A number of states have been grappling with questions about when and how to lift those stay-at-home orders. Georgia Republican Governor Brian Kemp has already done so, and not everyone is happy about it, including President Trump. When the Senate returns on May 4th, it will dive in on a new coronavirus relief package. House and Senate Democrats have said this package must include money for state and local governments. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has suggested changing the laws to let states declare bankruptcy instead. Linda Kenyon, Washington.
Fiat Chrysler is backing off a planned May 4th restart at its North American factories. Ford, General Motors, and Fiat Chrysler have been idle for over a month due to fears of spreading coronavirus. I'm John Trout.
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow.
Is that good for American finance?
What is happening with the headcount?
Right, where it counts. Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. European stocks are climbing alongside U.S. stock index futures as the earnings season gathers pace and governments contemplate reopening their economies. Crude oil is dropping. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 28 points, Dow futures up 267, and NASDAQ futures up 90. The DAX in Germany is up 1.4%. 10-year Treasury, little change, yield 0.66%. The yield on the 2-year, 0.21%. NYMEX crude oil down 5.2% on 66 cents at $12.13 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 80 cents. That's little changed at $17.25 an ounce. The euro, 1.0881 against the dollar. British pound, 1.2496, and the yen, 106.69. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, the Trump administration unveiled a blueprint for states to scale up their testing in the coming weeks that will ensure states have enough COVID-19 tests available to sample at least 2% of their populations each month. President Trump says he foresees schools soon welcoming students back as some states slowly reopen, even for a short time. Fear and frustration are raging as fast as the coronavirus in some juvenile detention centers, with riots and escapes reported in facilities in hard-hit New York and Louisiana. Parents and youth advocates say some kids are being kept in isolation up to 23 hours a day. Family visits have been cut off. President Trump says he knows the health status of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and suggested that the world would be hearing additional details in the not-too-distant future, but declined to elaborate further. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, John.
All right, Michael, thank you. It is now 5:49 on Wall Street. We are live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. Good morning. I'm John Tucker. Well, here we go again. Crude extending its slide below $11 a barrel. And for more on the price destruction, let's turn to Bloomberg Energy reporter Anne-Marie Hordern. Nice to see you again. This time, exacerbating the sell-off, the exchange-traded fund that trades in crude oil. Explain.
Yeah, the biggest ETF, the U.S. Oil Fund, decided they're going to sell all their positions in the front-month contract and expand them out to other contracts as far out into next year, into June 2021. One thing is interesting, though. They're talking about market volatility, talking about regulatory requirements, but also you have to think they just don't want to be exposed in the front month and have a deja vu of what happened last Monday. And then this morning, John, we have more news. Now we're seeing indexes do that. The S&P Dow Jones, they are deciding to as well move all their positions that are today in the contract of the June 2020 contract.
So any funds that are tied to that,
we're seeing all of them flee. They're really just abandoning this front month. And the S&P Dow Jones said it's because they're worried about prices going negative. So just more volatility. But as we talk about every time, what you're seeing on the screen is a reflection of what's really going on behind scenes in the physical market.
Okay, again, remind us what we call this, where the front month is lower than the out
contango.
months.
We're in deep contango, yes.
Now, how is this impacting the oil companies? They are reporting earnings. We heard from BP, among others.
It's going to be tough for the oil companies. One thing BP was able to do, and everyone was waiting to hear about this, was the dividend. Were they able to save the dividend? It's so sacred to this industry. It's why shareholders flock to them, and they were. But Bernard Looney, the new CEO, he said that potentially a scrip dividend can come out, which basically it would come from the shares. And analysts are saying it's safe, but for now it's safe. Equinor last week, they had to cut their dividend. So the rest of the week, when we have Shell report, Exxon, Chevron, the dividend is really going to be in focus for big oil. But they're under immense pressure.
Well, the BP CEO, I heard part of the interview in which he said at some point they'll be pivoting to this new reality. What does it mean by, and how are they going to pivot?
It's an interesting question. One thing that he is very keen on, as in a British word, a British company, is energy transition and making sure they're prepared for what's in the Paris Climate Agreement, and et cetera. The one thing that is very difficult for these energy companies is they don't have a ton of fat to cut off at the moment, because we saw in 2014 another oil price war in the sense the Saudis were going after market share, prices collapsed, and the industry had to slim down to deal with that. That was in 2014. They were able to slim down from then. Now you have this twin shock. They are dealing with a supply glut on top of the fact that consumption is just collapsing. There's not a ton left for these oil companies to trim. One other thing that BP has is this gearing ratio spiked 36%. That's the net debt ratio to equity. And for them, that is way above the ceiling they want to stay in, and something that analysts are really going to be watching.
Is that really a key for oil companies when you're trying to assess how they're doing? Just go right to the debt?
Yeah, that is one of the keys. Yeah, and BP right now has one of the highest ones.
Okay. As far as storage, let's get back to that. How you've been out?
What do you mean the lack thereof?
You've been out there with a dipstick measuring the storage. What does it tell us?
I wish I could get out a tanker. The storage. I mean, I'll just paint you a picture from around the world. So we could start in the U.S. We had news that 1.1 million barrels is going into the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. We knew that Donald Trump has wanted to do something to try to drain the glut in the United States. Cushing, Oklahoma, all but pretty much full. Goldman Sachs said first week of May that's going to be full. Then you have these unconventional storages in the United States. Off the coast of California, about 20 million barrels of unused oil, in these tankers, as well as in Singapore, you could see them. I mean, the pictures are quite dramatic. South Korea, one of the main hubs, they're all but full. And then the biggest storage facility in the Southern Hemisphere in South Africa, first week of April, they were saying it's nearly full. So we're really testing storage capabilities in this environment.
NYMEX crude right now, 93 cents lower, $11.85 a barrel. Anne-Marie, good to see you. Thank you. Bloomberg energy reporter Anne-Marie Hordern. And Karen, back to you.
All right, John, thank you. It is 5:53 on Wall Street. It's time now for the Bloomberg Law Report. Let's get to the legal stories we're watching this morning from Bloomberg's Jeff Bellinger.
Nationwide, state tax collections were down 1.3% last month compared to March of last year. That is according to the Urban Institute, which says the outlook for states in the coming months is poor. The Department of Health and Human Services is looking for companies that can make portable dialysis machines to support COVID-19 patients with kidney damage. The California Supreme Court decided that the state's bar exam will be delayed until fall, and it will most likely be administered online.
Bloomberg Law. Everything you need on one legal research platform. Guidance, analysis, and Bloomberg Market Intelligence. Find out more at BloombergLaw.com.
And now another legal story we're watching includes the Supreme Court dropping a lawsuit over New York City handgun transportation restrictions. The High Court says the city made issues in the case moot by changing the law to give residents more freedom to travel with weapons. For more on the decision, June Grasso speaks to Bloomberg Supreme Court reporter Greg Storr.
So did the court basically take an available off-ramp in the clash over New York City's handgun transportation restrictions?
It did, and it was actually a very big off-ramp. New York City had changed its law so that it wasn't entirely clear what the justices had left to decide. The three residents who sued said when they filed their suit that we want an injunction so that we can take our licensed handguns to shooting ranges outside the city, to a second home in one case. Once the city changed its law, they were able to do those things, and so the Supreme Court indeed said, there's nothing left for us here, we're going to kick out the case.
But three justices dissented. So what were they dissenting from if there was nothing left?
Well, Justice Alito, who wrote the dissent for the three of them, and these are the three most conservative justices, Alito, Thomas, and Gorsuch, he said, look, this is parties manipulating our docket. We agreed to take this case. We shouldn't let them avoid an important constitutional ruling by changing the law and then potentially changing it back at some later point. Gun rights advocates, both on and off the court, have been pining for about a decade to get another Supreme Court ruling expanding the Second Amendment. They thought this was their chance. That chance was taken away from them, and they were upset about it, and that's what we saw in Justice Alito's dissent.
Justice Brett Kavanaugh, was he basically saying, we won't do this one, but let's do this again soon?
Yes, he said, as a technical matter, he agreed with the court in getting rid of this case, but he very much agreed with Justice Alito that lower courts haven't been robust enough in enforcing the Second Amendment. And he pointed to all these other cases that have sort of been piling up, waiting for the New York case to be resolved, that raise other Second Amendment issues or related Second Amendment issues, suggested that the court may want to take up one of those. The most obvious issue for the court, and they've got a couple different cases, including one out of New Jersey, is the question of whether there is a constitutional right to carry a handgun in public. The two big Supreme Court cases that have been resolved on the Second Amendment both involve owning a handgun and possessing a handgun in the home for self-defense. The court has never decided whether that extends to having the right to bring it with you when you go out in public, and we may well see them do that next term.
And that's Bloomberg Supreme Court reporter Greg Storr speaking with June Garasso. Catch more of that interview, plus analysis of the latest legal news, by subscribing to the Bloomberg Law Podcast or downloading the show at Bloomberg.com/podcasts. And attorneys can find exceptional legal research and business development tools at BloombergLaw.com. Right now, S&P futures are up 35 points, Dow futures up 335, and NASDAQ futures up 109. 10-year Treasury little change, yield 0.65%. NYMEX crude oil is down more than 7%. It's at $11.87 a barrel. That's down to 91 cents. And Bloomberg Daybreak continues. This is Bloomberg.
Influential conversation.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Picture in your mind a stylish Audi with striking LED headlights, sporty alloy wheels, and some of our most advanced features, including a 10-inch digital cockpit and smart assistant systems like lane departure warning. Picture what that Audi looks like. Now think smaller. The Audi A1. It's not a small car, it's a small Audi. Visit audi.co.uk. Audi. Vorsprung durch Technik.
Fraudsters are getting more and more sophisticated, and it's easier than ever for people to make an honest mistake and lose their money. TSB doesn't think anyone should have to pay for being an innocent victim of fraud on their account. That's why they've created the TSB Fraud Refund Guarantee. To find out more, visit tsb.co.uk. Terms and conditions apply.
A day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Tuesday, April 28th, 2020. Coming up this hour.
The White House lays out plans to expand coronavirus testing.
Texas, Ohio, and Florida make moves to get business back to normal.
The second round of small business relief gets off to a rocky start.
And oil craters again, igniting fears of another round of negative prices.
New York Governor Cuomo extends shutdown orders, plus President Trump says he knows how North Korea's Kim Jong-un is doing, but can't say. I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. We're learning more about when the baseball season might begin and contingency plans being made by the NFL.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and U.S. futures are gaining this morning. We're coming up to 6:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. Right now, S&P futures are up 36 points. Dow futures up 333. NASDAQ futures up 114. The DAX in Germany is up 1.9%. CAC in Paris up 1.6%, and so is the FTSE 100. Nikkei 225 in Japan is little change, down less than 0.1%. Hang Seng in Hong Kong gained 1.2%. 10-year Treasury, little change, yield 0.66%. The yield on the 2-year, 0.21%. NYMEX crude oil down 6.8%, down 88 cents at $11.90 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.2% or $2.90 at $17.20.80 an ounce. The euro 1.0878 against the dollar. The yen 106.72. Nathan.
Karen, the White House is laying out plans to expand coronavirus testing.
We are continuing to rapidly expand our capacity and confident that we have enough testing to begin reopening and the reopening process. We want to get our country open.
The Trump administration is issuing new guidance for states to build testing capacity. That, it says, will provide enough tests to screen at least 2% of residents in each state.
Our blueprint describes how states should unlock their full capacity, expand the number of testing platforms, establish monitoring systems to detect local outbreaks, and conduct contact tracing. We have it all.
The plan includes retailers opening up testing locations across the country. CVS will open sites at 1,000 stores. Walgreens will offer tests in 49 states. And Quest Diagnostics says it will double testing capacity by the end of May.
Meantime, some governors are moving ahead with reopening states ahead of expanded testing capacity. And Bloomberg's Tom Busby joins us now with the details. Good morning, Tom.
Well, good morning, Karen and Nathan. Texas is relaxing restrictions on retail stores, restaurants, movie theaters, and malls, despite projections from the University of Washington showing hospitalizations and fatalities on the rise. Ohio announced more incremental measures, allowing manufacturing to resume and offices to reopen next week. Data show the outbreak beginning to decline in Ohio, but not for the 14 days outlined by the White House. In Florida, the state's 3 most populous counties are reopening parks and golf courses in a limited capacity. The counties account for 60% of corona cases in Florida, while projections show the state just coming off its peak for hospitalizations and deaths. I'm Tom Busby, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Tom, thank you. The virus could be here to stay. That's according to top scientists in China who warn COVID-19 is not likely to be eradicated. Here with details is Bloomberg Daybreak Asia anchor Brian Curtis in Hong Kong.
The researchers say better get used to it. This virus will likely come back in waves like the flu. This coronavirus infects some people without causing obvious symptoms like fever, and asymptomatic carriers make it hard to fully contain transmission as they can spread the virus undetected. The scientists say they see no evidence the virus will go away in summer. In Hong Kong, Brian Curtis, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Brian, thank you. Here in the U.S., small business has been hit hard by the pandemic. After a fresh round of funding, the relief program for small firms relaunched yesterday and got off to a rocky start. For details, we bring in Martin DeCaro from our Bloomberg 99.1 newsroom in Washington.
Lenders report being shut out of the Small Business Administration's overwhelmed system. The SBA says unprecedented demand slowed its loan processing platform, with double the number of users accessing the system compared to any day during the initial round of funding. By all accounts, this second round of cash will run out fast. Some lenders had thousands of applications waiting to go when the system restarted yesterday. J.P. Morgan Chase says it stopped taking new applications before the initiative relaunched because it was still working through a backlog of requests in its pipeline. In Washington, Martin DeCaro, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Martin, thanks. Looking at the markets now, oil is the big mover again today. West Texas Intermediate crude has been extending declines after yesterday's 25% drop. And joining us live at the very latest is Bloomberg's John Tucker. Good morning, John.
Yeah, good morning, Nathan. The drop in prices comes as the biggest oil exchange-traded fund begins selling all its holdings of the most active WTI contract. This as storage capacity dries up. The United States Oil Fund sold all its June contracts. That's raising concern that crude could head below zero again. We spoke with BP's CEO, Bernie Looney, about the collapse in demand.
We expect demand in the second quarter to be down in the world around 16 million barrels a day. Now, that's 5 times the previous record for demand destruction. That's the type of destruction that we are seeing.
NYMEX crude right now off the lows of the session right now, down about 6% at $12.05 a barrel. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. Meantime, we have earnings from BP showing demand destruction, slashing profits, and the worst is yet to come. The company expects the coronavirus outbreak to reduce production and have a material impact on refining in the second quarter. As a result, BP is boosting its financial reserves with a new $10 billion credit facility and a $7 billion bond sale. Shares were lower. They now have moved higher. They're up 1.6% in London.
UBS is out with earnings that beat estimates. The Swiss bank posted a 40% jump in profit and says it can withstand a surge in bad loans stemming from the pandemic. At the same time, UBS says the COVID-19 outbreak will put pressure on income streams at its wealth management business. Shares are higher by 5.6% in Zurich.
And HSBC reporting profit that fell short of estimates. The bank warns that bad loan charges could swell to $11 billion this year. HSBC is also putting off part of its restructuring program until the end of the year. Shares are down 0.5% in London. We're also watching these headlines crossing the Bloomberg. PepsiCo reporting organic revenue and core profit that beat analyst estimate that in the first quarter. It did withdraw its forecast due to uncertainty over COVID-19. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news, and this is Bloomberg.
All right, Karen, thank you. It is 6:07 now on Wall Street, and Michael Barr has more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is extending shutdown orders beyond the current mid-May mandate for much of the state. Cuomo says even though the curve is flattening, there are still too many lives lost to COVID-19 every day.
I will extend them in many parts of the state. But in some parts of the state, some regions, you could make the case that we should unpause on May 15th.
Cuomo said yesterday there were 337 new deaths reported in the past 24 hours. Meanwhile, 28 New York City teachers have died of the virus. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy laid out a 6-point plan for when it's safe for his state to reopen.
For us to move out from underneath this order, we need to see at the least a sustained reduction in the number of new positive COVID-19 test results, new COVID-19 related hospitalizations, and other metrics.
Murphy also says he needed to extend the state's stay-at-home order indefinitely. President Trump weighed in on the health of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, saying that he has a very good idea about his condition, but would not elaborate.
I do have a very good idea, but I can't talk about it now. I just wish him well. I've had a very good relationship with Kim Jong-un. If I weren't president, you'd be in war. You would have been in war with Korea. You would have been in war with North Korea if I wasn't president. That I can tell you. He expected that. That I can tell you. I hope he's fine. I do know how he's doing, relatively speaking.
Kim has not been seen in public for more than 2 weeks. President Trump is disputing reports that he may try to delay or postpone next fall's election. The president says he never even thought of changing the date. Gun stores and golf courses got the green light to reopen in one New Mexico city, where the mayor is bucking state directives that aim to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. The mayor of Grants, Martin Hicks, said they at first played along with public health orders that shuttered everything but stores and activities deemed essential. Hicks said the cooperation ended when Democratic Governor Grisham said the state would extend those orders until at least May 15th. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
All right, thanks, Michael. 6:09 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Good morning, John Stashower.
All right, good morning, Nathan. The speculation continues concerning the return of sports. How, where, most importantly, when. ESPN is reporting a growing optimism about there at least being a 2020 baseball season, with that Arizona plan of players being sequestered there now considered unlikely. There was pushback from players, but that there could be a return of training in June and a regular season going from July through October, with the postseason in November. While the NFL is set to release a normal schedule in a couple of weeks, it's also working on a contingency starting late in October, eliminating bye weeks, pushing the Super Bowl back. English Premier League could resume its season in June, and it certainly appears that if there are Stanley Cup playoffs, they will be in the summer. The players missed the games. Here's the Rangers' 22-year-old defenseman from Long Island, Adam Fox.
You know, obviously, being from New York and playing for the Rangers, obviously I took a big hit on New York and New York City, so just hoping everyone's staying safe, and I definitely want to get hockey back soon. So hopefully we could do that, and obviously make things a little better now.
When we last saw the Rangers, they were fighting to make the playoffs. Well, the Giants were able to keep Marcus Golden, who had 10 sacks last season, was perhaps their best defensive player. He's a free agent. Giants have tendered him, which means if he's not signed by another team by July 22nd, they'll get to keep him. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan?
And John, if sports don't resume this year, look for Walt Disney to be one of the most impacted companies. NFL and college football account for almost half of all sports viewership on Disney's ESPN and ABC networks. Bloomberg Intelligence says a cancellation of the college football season would wipe out about $1.8 billion in industry ad revenue. Plus, the lack of live games would put pressure on ESPN's $10 billion in affiliate fees. The NBA also brings in about $965 million of ad revenue for Disney. Futures building on their gains this morning. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new
Oh, just there, Dave. Smashing. Great. Really? Night, Steve. Yeah, see ya. Built to take the big knocks. Samsung rugged devices. Easy to use, hard to break. Explore the Samsung Rugged range.
The pressure washer that means your patio is barbecue ready. The 4K projector that brings the thrill of the cinema to you. The yoga mat that turns your lounge into a studio. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of your leisure time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face to face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, Video Call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has ignored a call on purpose? Tick. Talked yourself out of a workout? Tick. Spent far too long scrolling on your phone? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5 and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Television. Here's Tom McKenzie.
XPeng Motors unveiled an electric car that will compete against Tesla's Model 3 in China by offering a longer range and cheaper price. The Chinese electric vehicle maker is betting that the P7's price and features will allow it to challenge Tesla. Let's bring in XPeng Motors Vice Chairman and President Brian Gu. He joins us exclusively from Jiaoqing in Guangdong Province. How does this new model position XPeng then in terms of its strategy going forward, competing with the likes of Tesla?
As you know, XPeng is focused on the middle market of the Chinese consumers. So our price range is from 150,000 RMB to 300,000 RMB per vehicle price. We had a successful launch yesterday, and the vehicle, as you can see actually behind me, is a sports sedan with a longer wheelbase than our first product. It's actually the size between a Model S and Model 3, and it offers amazing driving range, autonomous driving capabilities, smart cockpit, as well as the performance and designs, which I think will compete very well against its competitors.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Southwest Airlines is cutting the number of Boeing 737 MAX jets it'll take through December 2021 by more than half as the travel outlook remains bleak. Also a busy morning for earnings. We've already heard from PepsiCo. Organic revenue and core profit beating analyst estimates in the first quarter, although it withdrew its forecast due to uncertainty over COVID-19. S&P futures are higher, up 33 points this morning. Dow futures up 304. NASDAQ futures up 105. The DAX in Germany's up 1.7%. 10-year Treasury up 1/32nd, yield 0.65%. The yield on the 2-year 0.21%. NYMEX crude oil down almost 7%, down 91 cents at $11.86 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.1%, down $1.90 to $17.21.90 an ounce. The euro 1.0872 against the dollar. British pound 1.2483. And the yen at 106.72. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, President Trump discussed new coronavirus testing guidelines along with reopening businesses and touched on the economy. Speaking from the White House Rose Garden, the president says the third and fourth quarter will be spectacular, but what happens in the second happens in second. There are close to 1 million cases of coronavirus in the U.S. and about 56,000 people have died. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un may have missed a key holiday on April 15th because of concerns over the coronavirus, not because he is ill. That is what South Korea's Minister for North Korean Affairs is now saying. Meanwhile, President Trump says he knows the health condition of Kim and indicated he is alive, but declined to say how he knew or provide details. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. It is 6:19 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager. We've gotten a lot of evidence of the damage done by the coronavirus to the U.S. economy, and we'll get a lot more insight tomorrow when we get first quarter GDP figures out. Joining us now, Tom Porcelli, Chief U.S. Economist at RBC Capital Markets. Of course, we know, Tom, more than 26 million jobs lost, businesses shuttering. How big a hit to GDP do you see coming in the current quarter?
In the current quarter, meaning Q2, or the current quarter? Yeah, so Q2, we're looking for about a 30% decline. Q1, which, as you said, is going to be coming up this week. I think decline will be obviously much more modest. The shut-ins really didn't start until the latter part of March. So we're looking for a more modest sort of 2% decline there. But I think whatever Q1 and Q2 are going to be, I think the bigger and more interesting part of the conversation is where does it go, and more importantly, what is the shape of it? And that's something we've been spending a lot of time speaking with clients about, because after this gargantuan decline in Q2, that seems to be mostly expected at this point. I think that the one thing that is an open question is what happens in Q3 and Q4, and then even thereafter. And there, I think, is from our perspective, you're going to get a pretty sizable bounce back in the third quarter. Once we roll into the fourth quarter, maybe that's even a more interesting quarter, because look, there is a lot of discussion about does the virus come back in the fall and winter, and we have an amazing biotech team at RBC, and we've been doing a lot of sort of work with them on trying to model out exactly how this could look. And so I think you have to consider that there's a very real possibility you get a relapse in the fall winter, and then Q4 succumbs a bit. But at that point, and again, what happens thereafter? Again, interesting conversation too, because if there's a therapeutic in place, if we're getting close to the point of herd immunity, if we've done enough testing for people to sort of realize that the mortality rate is quite a bit lower than was originally feared, I mean, that could get people back into the mood of spending and want to get back to some semblance of normalcy. And let's be clear, that I think that exists right now. And indeed, if you look at some recent polling data, I mean, I think the Harris poll has really been doing a very good job of this. They've been doing a COVID-19 poll, and they've been doing it for, I think, they're on like week 8 now at this point. And it's quite clear, looking at that, one of the key questions there has been, how quickly do you want to get back to doing some normal things, like going out to dinner, like going to the movies, and et cetera, et cetera. And I remember when I first saw this poll a handful of weeks back, I was surprised at the numbers. Within 3 months of flattening the virus curve, 40% of people want to get back to doing these sort of everyday things. I mean, to me, that number was shockingly high.
Well, I guess the question though is, what does normal activity look like when so many consumers have been getting used now to spacing themselves out in line at the grocery store when they have to go out? I mean, how much does behavior change now that we've been through, for many of us, a couple of months of social distancing?
Yeah, I mean, and look, I don't think there's any question that behavior is going to change. Right? It'll be forced change on some level, right? But again, I think the bigger question is, do people really mind that? I mean, if it's a choice between some forced change, you have to be 6 feet apart from people, you have to wear face coverings, et cetera, et cetera. Do people mind that as much as the alternative? And the alternative is staying inside. I think people will endure some of these new changes. They will embrace them if that's the thing that gets them out of the house.
Only about a minute left here. The White House put out this new testing strategy, partnering with private sector. How do you see that affecting the recovery?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think, again, testing is key. When I think about it, I mean, I just think about, forget about being an economist for a second. We just as anyone who's going out to dinners and movies and just like everyone else, I think from my own personal perspective, I want to know what the counts are, because I think once you start to get to this point of mass testing, you'll then have a much better sense for what the mortality rate is on this, right? What the CFR is on this, the case fatality rate. I mean, to me, that's critical to know, because your reaction function, I think, is very different if it's 2 to 4% versus if it's 0.1 to 0.5%.
Yeah,
I think that's going to be critical for people in terms of their in terms of people putting it into their own thought process.
Thanks for this, Tom. Good talking with you this morning. Tom Porcelli, Chief U.S. Economist, RBC Capital Markets. We get those first-order GDP numbers tomorrow morning. Of course, a Fed rate decision tomorrow as well. Lots to discuss. We'll have full coverage here on Bloomberg Radio. Futures moving higher. S&P futures up 32 points. Dow futures higher by 303 points. NASDAQ futures a gain of 100. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The White House is out with a strategy to expand U.S. testing for the coronavirus, accelerating President Donald Trump's push to reopen the economy. A White House official said the administration plans to provide enough tests to all 50 states to screen at least 2% of their residents. Trump has faced criticism that the U.S. outbreak has become the largest in the world, in part because the government was slow to develop widespread testing to track and contain the disease. The Fed has expanded the scope and duration of a $500 billion emergency emergency lending program for state and local governments hit by the pandemic. This is one of 9 programs announced by the Fed to limit the economic harm from the virus. Investors today will dig into earnings from 3M, Pepsi, Caterpillar, Merck and Pfizer, Southwest Airlines and Starbucks, among other companies. Yesterday, a higher close on Wall Street with the broader market up about 1.5%. And crude oil continues to slump this morning, dipping below $12 a barrel. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Elite Advisory. Coming soon, Ricochet, the new action film written by, directed, and starring Euro Millions winner Timothy Barker, with music by Timothy Barker.
Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £28 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
The pressure washer that means your patio is barbecue ready. The 4K projector that brings the thrill of the cinema to you. The yoga mat that turns your lounge into a studio. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of your leisure time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face-to-face. So it's time to get creative. With the easy way to replace physical dates, Video Call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
This is an important message from the government. For now, we must all still stay at home. It can be hard, but it's making a difference. So please keep going for the ones you love. Keep going for every key worker on the front line as they keep going for us. Keep going because together we will beat the virus. To all of you making sacrifices every day, thank you. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has ignored a call on purpose? Tick. Talked yourself out of a workout? Tick. Spent far too long scrolling on your phone? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York, Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960 to the country, Sirius XM Channel 119, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
It is 6:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We are just about 3 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. U.S. futures are higher as the White House ramps up plans to expand coronavirus testing.
We're accelerating testing for Americans at retail locations across the country.
The plan calls for CVS to open testing sites at 1,000 stores. Walgreens will offer tests in 49 states, and Quest Diagnostics will double testing capacity over the next month.
We're doing everything in our power to heal the sick and to gradually reopen our nation and to safely get our people back to work.
President Trump says there'll be enough tests to screen at least 2% of residents in each state.
Well, meantime, some governors are moving ahead with reopening their states ahead of expanded testing capacity. Here with more is Bloomberg's Tom Busby.
Texas is relaxing restrictions on retail stores, restaurants, movie theaters, and malls. Ohio announced more incremental measures, allowing manufacturing to resume and offices to reopen next week. In Florida, the state's 3 most populous counties are reopening parks and golf courses. The counties account for 60% of corona cases in Florida. I'm Tom Busby, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Tom, thank you. Looking at the markets now, oil is the big mover again today. West Texas Intermediate crude is extending declines after yesterday's 25% drop. Joining us live at the very latest is Bloomberg's John Tucker. John, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. The biggest oil exchange traded fund is selling all holdings of the most active WTI contract as storage capacity dries up. The United States Oil Fund sold all of its June contracts. That's raising concern that crude could head below zero again. Stephen Shorrock is an oil analyst and president of the Short Group.
There is no demand. The economy is dead. We're not in a recession. We're in a Great Depression. It's bad, and it's only getting worse from here.
And checking prices right now, West Texas Intermediate is down 89 cents a barrel. That's a decline of 7% at $11.91. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. BP is out with earnings showing that drop in demand slashing profits. The company expects the COVID-19 outbreak to reduce production and have a material impact on refining in the second quarter. Shares were lower, but now moved higher, up 1.5% in London.
UBS is out with earnings that beat estimates. The Swiss bank posted a 40% jump in profit and says it can withstand a surge in bad loans stemming from the coronavirus pandemic. Shares are up 5.25% in Zurich.
And we are watching headlines crossing the Bloomberg. Caterpillar reporting a first quarter profit that missed analyst estimates, and 3M and Xerox both withdrawing their forecasts. And futures this morning are higher. Straight ahead, the latest world and national news, and this is Bloomberg.
All right, Karen, thank you. 6:33 on Wall Street, and this news update is brought to you by Stevens Institute of Technology. Future-proof your career with a master's in financial engineering or financial analytics. Attend Stevens Graduate Virtual Open House May 2nd. Register at stevens.edu/open house. Here's Michael Barr.
Nathan, thank you very much. Parts of New York State could start to reopen when coronavirus shutdown regulations expire May 15th. But Governor Andrew Cuomo says he plans to extend the shutdown rules past that date in many parts of the state, including the New York City area. He says life will be different, but can be better if New Yorkers are smart.
Sometimes it takes a crisis to wake people up, and it takes a crisis to change the body politic to actually accept change.
Cuomo said yesterday that 337 people died in the past 24 hours, but hospitalizations are basically flat. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy says his state is far from reopening for business as the spread of COVID-19 is still widespread. Murphy laid out a 6-point plan for when it's safe for his residents to leave their homes and get back to work. Murphy mapped out 4 of the 6 points on how the virus needs to be contained.
Meeting these 4 benchmarks, a sustained drop in the curve, expanded testing, contact tracing, and safe places for people to isolate, is critical to giving our residents confidence that we are not only in front of the crisis, but that when we do restart our economy, they should not fear going out and being a part of it.
New Jersey's death toll passed the 6,000 mark. Meanwhile, in Connecticut, deaths have totaled almost 2,000. Attorney General William Barr directed top Justice Department prosecutors to take legal action against state and local officials if their coronavirus restrictions go too far. Barr says the Constitution is not suspended in times of crisis. An Illinois judge ruled that Governor Pritzker's stay-at-home order violated the liberty of state lawmaker Darren Bailey, who sued to block the measure. Pritzker called it insulting. President Trump says he knows the health status of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and suggested that the world would be hearing additional details in the not-too-distant future, but declined to elaborate further.
I can't tell you exactly. Yes, I do have a very good idea, but I can't talk about it now. I just wish him well.
Meanwhile, top South Korean officials said they know Kim Jong-un's location. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Thanks, Michael. We're coming up to 6:36 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Here's John Stashower.
Nathan, the baseball season should have been a month in by now. There's an ESPN report that there will be a season with games played in a few different places. The new billion-dollar stadium in Arlington, Texas is now seen as a likely spot, and the regular season would be reduced to 80 to 100 games. The NBA had said that with some states opening, teams' facilities can as well. This Friday, they have now pushed that back to a week from Friday. Atlanta is open, but the Hawks were said to be hesitant about bringing players back in. Reportedly, the Lakers have asked the city of L.A. for permission to open their facility. And speaking of the Lakers, they applied for relief and were granted $4.5 million in the federal Payback Protection Program intended for small businesses. The Lakers have over 300 employees and are valued at $4 billion. They have returned the money. Marcus Golden of the Giants remains an unsigned free agent, but the Giants tendered him, something not done often. It means he can still talk to other teams, but if he's not signed by July 22nd, he stays with the Giants. Golden had 10 sacks last season. Deshaun Hightower was Tulane's leading scorer. He had announced he was leaving school for the NBA draft. Hightower's now in jail in Georgia, charged with felony murder. His lawyer says it was his brother who did the shooting, and it was in self-defense. April 28th, this date in New York sports history, 1985. The Yankees fired manager Yogi Berra just 16 games into the season. They hired, for the fourth time, Billy Martin. He wouldn't last long, though he'd return a few years later. And after getting fired, Yogi didn't speak with George Steinbrenner for 14 years. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan.
Thanks, John. 6:37 now on Wall Street. And coming up today, we get quarterly results from Alphabet. They'll set the tone in for tech earnings. That company reports after the close. And here with more is Bloomberg's Larry Kofsky.
Alphabet's exposure to the travel sector will pressure its results, according to Bloomberg Intelligence. Its cloud segment is seen as a bright spot, as engagement on its G Suite app skyrocketed with more people working from home. Investors will be focused on Q's for the second quarter, with analysts forecasting a sales decline of 3%. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Thanks, Larry. 6:38 on Wall Street.
The following commentary is from Bloomberg Opinion.
Fed would be foolish to take rates below zero. I'm Brian Chapata, a columnist for Bloomberg Opinion. Narayana Kocherlakota, former president of the Minneapolis Fed and a fellow Bloomberg Opinion columnist, wrote last week that the Fed should cut interest rates to at least 25 basis points below zero in a bid to boost the economy. I disagree. There are many reasons Fed officials are rightfully reluctant. Most obviously, the Fed has telegraphed what it would do at the zero lower bound before succumbing to negative interest rates, controlling the U.S. yield curve by extending its bond purchase program. Make no mistake, this would be a nightmare for bond traders, but negative rates would be even worse because it would harm the banking system and could even damage the psyche of an already fragile American public. The Fed should focus squarely on getting its credit programs up and running rather than heading down a potentially dangerous path. Interest rates are not the central bank's only tool anymore. Leave them be. I'm Brian Chapata. For more opinion, please go to Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN Go on the Bloomberg terminal.
This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
You can hear Bloomberg Opinion commentaries every weekday at this time. Terminal customers can read more at OPIN Go. It's 6:39 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Green Report. Here's Bob Moon.
You might never have heard of a chemical called perchloroethylene, but its regular use by the dry cleaning industry to make refrigerants and to clean muck from industrial equipment appears to have the potential to cause serious harm to the human nervous system and other damage. The Environmental Protection Agency examined factory workers making or using the solvent, as well as consumers using furniture, lubricants, or other products containing it. It concluded that in nearly each case, the possibility for perchloroethylene or PERC to injure those people was unreasonable high, from increasing cancer risks to harming vision and kidneys. An industry association told the agency that about 7 in 10 dry cleaning businesses use perchloroethylene. Far more companies use the solvent or make refrigerants with the chemical. Yet to be examined are the risks of breathing it, touching it, or being exposed to it through water or waste. That's the Bloomberg Green Business Report. I'm Bob Moon.
All right, Bob, thanks. And it's a first for a U.S. airline. JetBlue is now going to require its customers to wear face coverings because of the coronavirus outbreak. The new policy starts next Monday. And this red headline just crossed the Bloomberg terminal. Caterpillar says its second quarter is going to be more impacted than the first due to the coronavirus. Caterpillar just came out with first quarter earnings that missed analyst estimates. Futures moving higher this morning. You are listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires. Which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury.
Oh, just there, Dave. Smashing. Great. Really? Night, Steve. Yeah, see ya. Built to take the big knocks. Samsung rugged devices. Easy to use, hard to break. Explore the Samsung rugged range.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
While most of us are looking out for each other at this time, sadly, fraudsters are trying to take advantage of the situation. Here's Chris Ainsley from Santander with advice for keeping your money safe.
Phishing emails are designed to trick you into giving away personal details. Messages might be about travel refunds, delivery tracking, or supermarket vouchers. Remember, never click on links or attachments in emails received out of the blue.
For more advice on keeping your money safe, visit santander.co.uk.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. The best sports story all day, 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week. ESPN Daily.
Search ESPN Daily to listen.
Be part of the sports conversation with Sports Talk Radio on TuneIn. Join the discussion around your favorite local teams with sports stations broadcasting in your area.
The game will be 185 to 183, and somebody wins, whatever. Football, it's either full go or it's not. You got it's thud. I can practice what they call.
Follow national storylines and debates with ESPN Radio.
Does the NBA have a hiring problem when it comes to front office jobs in the leagues and a minority hiring issue? Stephen A. chimed in on that today on First Take.
It also resonates with me, Max. You can appreciate this position. One of the candidates was Brian Colangelo. We know what happened. I like Brian, but we know.
And hear what's happening worldwide with international channels like Talk Sport.
Seems as I'm sort of doing my life in reverse at the moment. I was on cricket tours when I was 20 years old, and now I'm 31. I'm sat at home injured playing PlayStation. So it's a tournament basically where you create your own character.
In your backyard and around the globe. Keep your finger on the pulse of the sports world with TuneIn.
News and financial information 24 hours a day. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update. Special report, coronavirus update.
Today we're releasing additional guidance on testing to inform the states.
President Trump laying out his administration's blueprint for states to handle increased coronavirus testing, which experts say is critical for states to safely reopen. Trump telling states they'll have to pull their own weight in terms of testing. As far as the tests themselves, the White House says the federal government is to act as the, quote, supplier of last resort. According to a White House official, the goal is for states to test a minimum of 2% of residents, with a priority on vulnerable groups and emergency workers. I'm Reed Binion.
It's primary election day in Ohio. Very little in-person voting is expected. Instead, vote by mail provides an option. Former Vice President Joe Biden, during a virtual fundraiser last night, says he's already working with a team to plan for his transition in preparation for winning the White House in November. I'm John Trout.
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow.
Is that good for American finance?
What is happening with the headcount?
Right, where it counts. Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, watching some earnings crossing the Bloomberg here. Pfizer reporting a first quarter profit that beat analyst estimates. Shares are up 2% in early trading. We're also watching Merck. First quarter profit beat analyst estimates, but it reduced its outlook for sales for the fiscal year. We're also watching Caterpillar. It reported first quarter profit that missed analyst estimates and said its second quarter will be more significantly impacted by the coronavirus. And PepsiCo, 3M, and Xerox all withdrew their guidance. Right now, S&P futures are higher, up 35 points. Dow futures up 342. NASDAQ futures up 109. The DAX in Germany's up 1.7%. 10-year Treasury, little change, yield 0.65%. Yield on the 2-year, 0.21%. NYMEX crude oil is falling, down 8.7%, down $1.10 to $11.67 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.1%, down $1.90 to $17.21.90 an ounce. The euro is at 1.0877 against the dollar. British pound 1.2492. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Nathan.
Thank you. We are live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, where it is 6:48 on Wall Street, and time now to check what's going on in D.C. Some of the top stories in the nation's capital include the White House beginning preparations for a transition in case President Trump is defeated in the November election. The president saying he knows how North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is doing, but can't say. And Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell demanding liability protections for business owners in the next round of stimulus. Also making news this morning, we've been telling you about all morning long, new White House guidelines on expanding coronavirus testing that lean on states and the private sector. For more on this, we're joined by Greg Vallier, Chief U.S. Policy Strategist at AGF Investments. Well, as we've been saying this morning, Greg, the centerpiece of this is a partnership now with large pharmacy retailers like Walgreens and CVS to provide expanding testing capacity. What do you make of this plan, and do you think it's going to be enough to bolster recovery?
You know, it's encouraging, Nathan. Good morning, but it's not a panacea. I mean, I think that what
gets us out of this is a combination of things, opening up gradually, more testing. But the big story is vaccines, and there's quite a story out of England from Oxford University, which apparently is well ahead of all other companies, all other facilities. They're saying they could have the beginnings of a vaccine available by September.
And I mean, that's going to be a huge development if that comes to fruition. I mean, that's right around the time of the election. I mean, how much could the president be counting on something like that to bolster his chances?
Well, it's probably, first of all, they have to prove that it works. It works with monkeys, but it's got to be proven in clinical trials, which apparently are going to start right away. If we have a plausible vaccine by early fall, that could help Trump, and that could help him if there's an economy that's starting to look like it's bouncing back. But you can't sugarcoat it. He's had a really bad week. The small business loan program is a disaster, and this bizarre comment that he made on disinfecting haunt him for the rest of this campaign.
Yeah, I mean, it could be the kind of thing that could be repeated over and over again in campaign ads, and there's still this lingering perception, I would imagine particularly among Democrats, that the federal government was slow to respond to the beginnings of the coronavirus pandemic. How does the president get ahead of that?
Well, his numbers right now are terrible. His polls have slipped by quite a bit, as you know. But he will make this election all about Joe Biden. And it's worth noting that at this time 4 years ago, Hillary Clinton was far ahead of Trump. And, of course, she lost. So it's still early. And Trump, I think, can still frame, Joe Biden as somebody who was too close to China and a lot of other things with Biden. So it's way too early to write him off. And again, if we're getting hopeful about a virus and the economy looks better, Trump still has a decent chance.
I mean, there's still a big question, though, about how quickly the recovery happens if people's behavior changes because of this extended shutdown. So how could that affect things politically?
Yeah, well, that's a really key issue. You can open up states, but does that mean people want to go to restaurants? Do they want to go to Yankee Stadium? I mean, there's all sorts of questions about people being very reluctant to do this until there's an effective virus.
We got another round of stimulus debate coming next week when Congress gets back into session, and a lot of markers being laid into the ground here. What do you see the chances for a fifth round of stimulus coming quickly?
Well, it's going to be the toughest one of all, Nathan, and I think that Mitch McConnell and a lot of fiscal hawks are aghast that we're going to have a deficit of $4 trillion this year, so they want to go slow. At the same time, I think Trump's position will be we have to do more for state and local governments, but we won't spend a penny on pension plans that have been poorly run in states like Illinois. But I think more aid to state and local governments has to come. I think it'll be at least $1 trillion. The next bill will be that big.
It's interesting you bring that up because we got that tweet yesterday from President Trump wondering aloud about potentially blocking aid to what he calls poorly run states led by Democrats. Do you think it'll come to that?
Yes, when it comes to pension plans, but I think otherwise there's going to have to be a deal. And the major reasons I'd say are, number one, there are a lot of Republicans in Congress who know you've got to do more for state and local governments. Number two, if Trump wants to win, he can't have state and local governments flat on the mat. He's got to give them some support if he wants to win re-election.
And small businesses, of course, are still looking for support. We've got this second round, the second tranche of small business loan funding, and more evidence that it's running into log jams. What's it going to take to smooth this process out for small businesses?
That's a really tough question, Nathan. I have relatives who cannot get small loans. They run small restaurants, small businesses. The computers broke down yesterday. The Small Business Administration is woefully unprepared for something this mammoth, and maybe more egregiously, an awful lot of fat cats or crooks or campaign contributors have cut in line and they've gotten money. And I think there's a real disillusionment on the part of a lot of small business owners that they got shafted.
Yeah, we only have a couple seconds left here, Greg. I guess the biggest headline, the Lakers, Los Angeles Lakers, getting billions of dollars that they had to give back. Does this need to be better streamlined for businesses that really need the money?
there really has to be oversight. Part of it's a problem with the banks, but I think Washington has to look at this a lot more carefully before we do a third tranche of aid.
Thanks, as always. Greg Vallier, Chief U.S. Policy Strategist at AGF Investments. Karen?
All right, Nathan, thank you. It is 6:54 on Wall Street. It's time for the Bloomberg Small Business Report with John Tucker. John, good morning.
Hi, Karen. Today, we hear from Jen Walters-Rykon. She's the owner and operator of Chrysalis Skin Therapy in Frederick, Maryland. Her skincare and facials business has been running for over a year. It's ground to a halt since the stay-at-home orders went into effect. Jen, good morning. Tell us what it's been like for you.
It's been difficult, mostly because I find that the business is also a very peaceful part of my life. You know, human connection is a basic need for us to thrive in life. So I think that it being shut down has been very difficult for myself, but also for my guests, because they don't have access to that space that helps them to feel better. I will say, however, there's also a retail side to it. I sell skincare for home care. So I have been able to pivot some with this situation because I feel like entrepreneurs by spirit are like people who are problem solvers and people who are, persevere. And so I've just had to pivot a little bit to keep my connection with my guests. It's not enough to really give me a paycheck, but it's enough to keep me covering my overhead while I'm not in business.
Have you been able to make up the decrease in revenue with this pivot toward retail?
Full disclosure, I rent from Sola, and our landlord is like the greatest human on the planet, and I love him and his wife. And he actually went ahead and told us, look, rent is suspended indefinitely until we open back up. However, I do have other overhead, so I've been maintaining that. And the product sales are not enough. Like, I haven't had a paycheck since March 23rd. It's still difficult. It's still impacting my family in that respect.
Now, have you applied for aid? If so, how has that process worked out?
I personally chose not to apply for aid simply because I don't feel comfortable going further into debt, and I don't have any employees. So number one, I felt like in the long run I wouldn't qualify for it to become a grant, so I would have to pay it back, and I didn't feel comfortable with that. And number two, I wanted to save it for people like my mom, who owns a veterinary hospital, who's still running, but the health department has restricted what she can offer, so she needs to make sure she can pay her employees and keep them going. So I wanted to reserve it for people who really needed it. However, I was able to apply for unemployment. That was stressful. Maryland opened it up for self-employed people, et cetera, as they said they would do under the CARES Act. However, I haven't seen if I'll actually get approved or anything like that, or what that will look like, but I'm, hoping that it's a fairly quick turnaround process, but I realize that this system is very burdened right now.
All right, Jen, thanks. Thanks very much. Jen Walters-Rykon, owner of Chrysalis Skin Therapy in Frederick, Maryland. And we're going to continue bringing you stories of small businesses struggling through the coronavirus pandemic every day at this time, right here on Bloomberg Daybreak. I'm John Tucker. That's your Bloomberg Small Business Report. Karen.
All right, John Tucker, thank you. We continue to watch earnings cross the Bloomberg. It's a busy morning for that. Harley-Davidson's first quarter profit beating analyst estimates by 1 cent. Pfizer is higher, up 2% in early trading after its first quarter profit beat. Merck's first quarter profit beat, but it, along with 3M, said the worst is yet to come in the second quarter. And futures this morning are moving higher. NYMEX crude oil is falling. Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrow, and Lisa Abramowitz is straight ahead. And for Nathan Hager, I'm Karen Moscow, and this is Bloomberg.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has ignored a call on purpose? Tick. Talked yourself out of a workout? Tick. Spent far too long scrolling on your phone? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks to National Lottery players, communities across the country are about to benefit from up to £300 million of funding.
Thank you. Thank you.
Money that will help support the most vulnerable in these exceptional times.
Thank you. Thank you.
Food banks, local health organisations, charities combating loneliness, and thousands of other community causes will all get vital resources.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it's all thanks to you, playing the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen.
Segments of Alphabet's business are most likely to come under scrutiny.
Get all the pieces.
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
He's failed to gain traction.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
We are being taken out of our comfort zone by the coronavirus.
Dollar weakness is pretty much a good thing for a lot of the rest of the world.
Finance.
We are going to see a global demand contraction this year, most likely, for oil. The financial health of the business sector has deteriorated somewhat.
Investment.
Obviously, the value in high-vol stocks are going to continue to suffer.
It looks as though the bond market is talking itself into a recession here.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrell, and Lisa Abramowitz on Bloomberg Radio.
From New York City for our audience worldwide, good morning, good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. Coming up on the program, the push to reopen the economy continues. Index selling sending the June WTI contract plunging, and Alphabet kicking off results for the Big Five. In the equity market this Tuesday morning, good morning. Here is your price action. Equity futures up 31 through 2,900 on the S&P 500, up a little more than 1%. Elsewhere in the bond market, treasuries as follows. Yields unchanged, 0.66% on a US 10-year. In the commodity market, we'll get into the details a little bit later, but the June contract hammered off the back of some index selling. We are down by 9% to $11.62. Alongside Tom Keene, I'm Jonathan Farrow, together with Lisa Abramowitz. You are listening to Bloomberg Surveillance live on Bloomberg Radio. A massive focus on corporate earnings this week. And in the last hour, Lisa, PepsiCo, 3M, UPS, all withdrawing 2020 guidance.
Here's what's confusing me, and you've just referenced this, John, that basically you're getting a flatlining of bond yields, and that's both with the government bonds and it's also with the credit yields. And this speaks to this lack of knowledge, right? We're getting no guidance whatsoever from companies that have no visibility, and yet volatility is going down. People are somehow finding some sense of complacency within this, that they're going to be backstopped either way, and things can just trade in a range. And I'm just struck by this at a time when we're getting catastrophically horrible economic data. I mean, again and again, I'm just amazed by that.
My takeaway whenever I see these headlines, Lisa, I'm always surprised there is still a company left offering any guidance. I thought they'd all canned guidance a couple of weeks ago, but apparently they're still out there and they're still coming through this morning. But I think what you touch on is really important. A complete lack of visibility. Optimism about reopening the economy, but a complete lack of visibility about what reopening and normalization looks like over the next 9 months.
Lack of visibility, which means just stay where you are, right? I mean, interestingly, in the past, the narrative might have been a lack of visibility amid such terrible economic data would mean sell, would mean hunker down. And that was the initial knee-jerk reaction. That's changed. Now the knee-jerk reaction to a lack of visibility is just make up the narrative and hope for the rest of what might happen on the other side of this.
Hope is the optimal outcome, isn't it? Hope, hope, hope. Line up a guest looking fantastic through the next couple of hours. Looking forward to bringing them to you right here on Bloomberg Radio. We can begin the conversations this morning with Russ Kostrick of BlackRock, Global Allocation Fund Portfolio Manager. Russ, always great to get your thoughts. The companies don't have any clarity on the outlook. Investors have hope. How are you thinking about that dilemma, Russ?
Well, I think we don't have clarity. We're not likely to get clarity for some time, but there are a couple of things we know, and I think this is what has given the market a bid. The first of which is at the bottom, you had a lot of liquidity-driven selling, not because people were that bearish on the fundamentals, because liquidity dried up. You had a lot of leveraged sellers in the market. Thankfully, we're past that. And then the other major thing that's happened is a massive and rapid response, both on the monetary side and the fiscal side. Now, to be clear, that doesn't solve the problem, but it does mitigate some of the risk. And I think that's put a floor under the market. It's helped stocks stabilize. I would agree that it's going to be much harder from here, just given the uncertainty that you and Lisa spoke about.
Russ, when you talk about the Federal Reserve backstopping some of the risk, or at least putting a floor under it, right now it seems as though the market is expecting the Fed to go as far as it takes to stabilize market valuations, including delving deeper into junk and possibly entertaining other types of asset purchases. Do you think that the market's gotten ahead of itself, or do you think that the Fed will ultimately respond to market pressures?
Well, I don't think the Fed has to go as far as, let's say, the Bank of Japan that has gone to purchasing ETFs in order to keep the market calm. I think what the Fed has done are a couple things. They have taken away a lot of the liquidity risk, the massive liquidity risk that we saw in March. They have dulled some of the solvency risk by providing a backstop in credit, increasingly in the municipal market, in money markets. So what we're seeing now is, again, lessening that left tail, that risk of liquidity and solvency issues that doesn't go away, but is much less acute than it was a month ago. Now, again, for the market to go higher, what we do need to see is some improvement in the fundamentals, and that's going to be less a function of the stimulus and more of a function of when does the lockdown start to ease in a way that lets commercial activity, just basic human activity, go back to something approximating normal.
Russ, what are you seeing at BlackRock that people are actually doing with their money?
I think people are investing. Tom, one of the things that, this has caused is you think about, and I've spoken to a number of advisors over the past few months, you still have retail investors looking at their portfolio, many of them older, thinking about income, and they're facing an even bigger crunch versus what they had over the last 10 years. People are looking for places to put money to work. They know that stocks are volatile. They know that bonds have become more volatile. But most people still need to plan for their retirement, which means that it's not as easy to sit on the sidelines when cash is at zero, and maybe at zero for a very long period of time.
How has that planning changed in the last 3 months, Russ?
Well, I think there are a couple things. Honestly, one thing I've heard from a number of people across the country is that we didn't see the type of panic among retail investors that has characterized other crises. I think, Jonathan, the biggest issue is where can you find income? It's not just the fact that cash has gone to zero. You've got the entire U.S. curve up to 10 years below 1% in yield. While credit spreads have narrowed, you have not the same type of returns you had there. So what are people doing? I think they're looking for relatively safe places to invest. This is one reason that the FANGs have actually done so well, because their business models are in general still sound. People are looking for safe sources of income on the equity side. This has helped healthcare. It's helped some of the staple companies that are a little less volatile, because people do need to put money to work, and income has become an unbelievably scarce commodity.
Russ, how far into riskier credit are you willing to go to get income?
Well, we have a multi-asset portfolio. Global allocation, we've actually been adding some on the IG side. One way to think about that is we'd like investing alongside the Fed. I think there are opportunities in the high-yield market, but you've got to pick your spots. Everyone knows a lot of high yield now has been dominated by some of the industries that are more challenged, whether we're talking about energy or brick and mortar retail. So I don't think it's a matter of going in and buying the index. I think it's a matter of selecting individual names.
Russ Kostrich, is gold an asset for you?
Gold is an asset, Tom, but it's a tricky asset, and it's one that I think sometimes people mischaracterize. There's still a lot of talk about gold as an inflation hedge. And, if you take that view, it's not obvious why you own gold in an environment where, at least in the near term, we're likely to see a lot of disinflationary pressure.
Yeah.
I look at gold differently. I think gold is a risk mitigant. In other words, it's an asset you can hold that generally, not always, but generally has a negative correlation with stocks. In that respect, gold has done what you'd want it to do. And I think in an environment in which not only are nominal rates low, but real rates are negative, that's generally an environment gold does very well. So we've been buyers of gold over the last month or two.
Russ, the money question here, and John, jump in here. I want you to expand on this as well, is with the lack of diversification, the S&P 500 and the concentration of 6, 7, 8 stocks, I'm supposed to be diversified. How do you handle that gross concentration, that historic concentration in the S&P 500 if you want to in some way rebalance to some form of theoretical allocation?
Well, I think it's a great question, and I think it probably is the question because it is a very narrow market. And I would say a few things. One, I would not abandon some of those mega cap growth stocks because, again, while they're not as cheap as they were, they have some pretty impressive business models that are likely, in many cases, to get a boost from the crisis. So I would hold a core holding, although I would trim. International diversification. We're cautious on Europe. We're cautious on Japan. We've actually been finding good opportunities in China. Again, it's not completely as diversified as it might have been under normal circumstances, but as the economies diverge, you actually get some diversification benefit. Third, you have to own more hedges. If equity volatility is higher, the way you counteract that is you own a little bit more on the hedges, whether we're talking about long bonds, gold, dollar, cash, to help mitigate that equity risk.
Russ, always great to get your thoughts on a program. I hope the team are doing well. Russ Kostrick there of BlackRock. Tom, to your point, the 5 biggest stocks on the S&P 500 now account for 20% of the index, according to Goldman, the highest concentration in more than 30